Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if Deku was abandoned and sold to the pits. Here is short summary. Izuku was abandoned by his father and sold into the fighting pits. Have to fight and kill to survive. Fortunately his quirk fueled by blood. Himiko was sold to the pits as well, where you do what you need to survive. Together they found something to survive for. A once-in-a-lifetime offer. Introduce some chaos into the system, said the rat. For our family, they said. IzukuxToga. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Izuku sat in his holding cell awaiting his fate, bound and chained. He looked down at his hands, they were bruised and scarred. Hell, his entire body was bruised and scarred. It didn't matter as long as his family was safe. He would have been dead if it wasn't for her, not that he would have minded, but he had to make sure she was safe. It wasn't for his daughter's unique quirk of hers, they would both be dead. Now that honor only belonged to Chisaki and that ringmaster. There were others, sometime had known their names, sometimes he simply forgot them. It had taken forever to get the information to the right people. If it wasn't for a chance meeting, fight with the underground hero Eraserhead, they would be dead. He had made a deal, help bring down the organization in exchange for his family's safety and immunity for his wife. It had been a terrible run at life. Here he was at 17, bound for Tartarus for at least 30 years. It was a wrap. Mother passed when he was 4, abandoned by his father, shoved into the system, sold into the pits, trained to fight to live, had to kill to live. Then he meets her. Blonde hair, yellow eyes, sharp teeth, a big ball of crazy and bloodlust. He had made a slight mistake. He wasn't supposed to kill that opponent, but you know shit happens. But he had to be punished. The ringmaster would see to that. They threw him in the hole. Not his first visit, but know something he looked forward to. He liked things like fresh air and sunshine. Life up top was not great, but there were friends, other fighters that you would bond with, then have to beat to bloody pulp the next night. Very gladiator-esque. Not stale air and shitting in a hole in the corner. However long of solitude would beat, but like he said, not his first time. Then the door opened and in she was tossed, Himiko-toga. Locked in a cell first was all fists, kicks and teeth. First, they fought each other. That was of course when he found out that she need blood. She had been tossed in cell. He tried to calm her down, that went oh so well. Then fight. When she first bit him he thought nothing of it, the second time she did it he couldn't get her off right away. Then he heard it, she begged him to let her drink, she would give him her body. He froze. It was such a desperate plea. When she pulled back it was the look of a junkie. She started to pull off her clothes but he stopped her, holding some sort of filthy cloth to his neck. She still had the crazy look, but it wasn't the feral one she first had. He didn't know why he cared, but he was so damn touch-starved that when she was hugging him while drinking, it was the most intimate act that he could remember. Of course, there was violence involved, but that was what he knew. Then they started to talk, form a bond. Neither knew why. They were left alone for 2 weeks like this. Food would be brought to them and that was it. He wasn't dragged to the pit, she wasn't taken wherever. The ringmaster knew what he was doing, letting them bond. They would say they couldn't care less, but humans are social animals. That's the thing also when you are locked in a dark room with someone, 2 weeks could be 6 months. When they came to take her, he fought, she fought, holding on to her hands, trying to drag her back into their little cell, only to knock unconsciousness. He would wake up and they would come in and tell him, if you want to see her again, XYZ. Take a dive, win at this time, by this method, go collect this department and come back. They did the same to her. If you want to see him again, go here, see this client, steal this item, kill this person who slightly offended the ringmaster by breathing too loud. It worked, they were pliable then. 3 years of this they were hopelessly dependent on each other. She would patch him up and nurse him back to fighting shape. He would wrap her in blankets and hold her, patch her up sometimes as needed. Used and abused. They had had a nice run where life was still a shit sandwich, but it hadn't been a soggy one. It started with a kiss. He had pulled away apologizing he knew what she would sometimes have to go through. She pulled him back. Everything had always been taken from her. She wanted to give it freely. Then they gave them the little girl. They would fight so desperately whenever they would come to take her. Plan. Try everything they could. Then that bird-masked son of a bitch would just lay a hand on them. Most of the time one of them, so the other would have to beg and plead for him to restore whomever he had splattered. It was a game. The goons would come, let Himiko and Izuku fight, then he would show up. Splat. Tears. Begging. Do you understand what it is like for a 5-year-old to beg for her, mommy, or daddy, hell sometime both? It was on a collection assignment that he met Eraserhead. He was so desperate, maybe that is what persuaded the hero. Izuku had no idea. It took a whole year to get to the point that he found himself sitting in. But it was worth it. He closed his eyes and thought of Himi and Eri somewhere, in a park, sun on their faces, playing and laughing. He couldn't stop the tears from falling. That would be his heaven, the sun on their faces and happiness. The raid had finally come, heroes and police, yakuza and blood. Goons and death. Some blonde kid had taken a bullet to the back, some heroes had been retired, in the end it was him and Eri. Even then it was almost over till they created the opening and All Might finished the deal. They were going to take that piece of shit to jail. Izuku couldn't have that. That man would haunt Eri forever. He ran his fingertips across All Might's uniform collecting his blood and engaged his quirk. He removed Chisuke's head from his shoulders. The heroes tackled him, were yelling, all he could do was laugh. He saw Himi and Eri being loaded into an ambulance, and she flashed him the ringmaster's monocle. It was over. Himiko Toga, she sat in a pair of gray police sweats, with Eri sitting on her lap. Eri had fallen asleep as Himiko stroked her hair. She felt a sense of relief. Chisuke and the ringmaster were dead. Then she thought of Izuku, and she had to fight back tears. She hadn't seen him since they were brought to the police station. She had just finished giving her statement when the door opened. She looked up and her fear increased. Eri immediately woke up and dashed behind her mommy as Himiko stood up. A hobo-looking of a man had walked in, followed by a woman with a cat quirk in a suit. Himiko immediately recognized her as part of child safety, as had some experience with that department. Now Ms. Toga, please calm down. The man said. Who the beep is she and what is she doing here? This is Mrs. Ryu. She is from child safety. We are here to talk about the child. Mommy, Eri said quietly. It's okay baby, no one is going to take you, not unless they want to get killed. The man raised an eyebrow. Now Ms. Toga, is that a really wise course of action? Not the first time I have had to do something stupid. We need to find this girl's parents. Her mom is right here, and Izuku is her dad. Where is he? Mr. Midoriya is in a cell ATM. Why? He killed Kai Chisaki. He was being taken into custody. Mr. Midoriya decided to be executioner. He beeping deserved it. He would have never stopped coming after Eri. What he did. Toga shuddered. I understand your connection to the child but nothing. Is there even a missing persons report? You show me that and we can talk. There stated to be glow behind her. The woman backed towards the exit. Himiko immediately turned around and started to try and calm Eri. No, I want my daddy, I want me daddy, give me my daddy. Eri's hair began to float up as her horn was growing and releasing a blinding light. The man's hair floated into the air and Eri's light stopped and she passed out. Himiko cradled her daughter. What did you do? I erased her quirk temporarily. I am not sure what it is but I know that it is dangerous. I saw it during the battle. Izuku calls it rewind. She can reverse something or someone in time. She doesn't have parents. When her quirk activated, she killed them. How do you know this? Because I'm her mother and her dad is beeping brilliant. Izuku. He was sitting, eyes closed just imagining his sunshine. Izuku Midoriya. He opened his eyes and saw a tall man with gray hair in a red hero suit with white accent. On his shoulder was a miniature bear. No mouse, no, something. Last I checked I understood I wasn't this crazy. Ah. Well beep it. Do I get a chance to see my family before you ship me off to Tartarus? I am sure that can be arranged. The creature spoke. I am the principal UA. You may call me Nezu. What does the principal of UA want to do with me? Well, Izuku, can I call you Izuku? You can call me anything you want. Well, Izuku, do you want to explain why you decided to kill Kichisaki? When he was going to be taken into custody by All Might. That is the exact reason. The large man raised his eyebrow. Explain. He was still breathing. If he was still breathing, he was a threat to Eri. I knew that I was going to end up in Tartarus and I had to know that she was safe. And you decided you know what's best. Do you have a name? Vlad King. Vlad. Okay. Vlad, are you married, or do you have kids? No. What about you, Nezu? In case you haven't noticed, Izuku, I am unique. Okay, well, I am going to assume that the two of you have someone that you care about in some fashion. Now I want you to imagine those people being exploded in front of you over and over again. Then you get to see them reconstructed in front of you, till you comply. Now if you had a kid, and you were not going to be around to protect them, wouldn't you want them to know that the monster was dead? You seem to have no problem doing it. Vlad said. Not the first time I killed someone, hell, not even the first time I did it on purpose. Vlad raised an eyebrow. Nezu said nothing. Look, in the pits it was kill sometimes or be killed. It happens. But I did my part. Check with Eraserhead. I fulfilled my end of the bargain. I feed him the information he needed, helped with the raid. He makes sure my family is safe. I love them more than my own life. As long as they are safe, I will do my time with no problems. Tell me about the child, Nezu said. Himiko. Okay, Ms. Toga. Let's say what you say about her parents are true. Her quirk is dangerous, and how do you plan on taking care of her? Izuku and I will figure it out. Not if you are in jail. Bullshit, we have immunity. He told me that whatever hero he made the deal with would make sure we were set up and that we would be taken care of till we found work. No, Ms. Toga, you have immunity. Izuku negotiated that for only. Himiko eyes watered. That stupid jerk. I want to see him. Bring him here. Not now. He is being interviewed by my associate. The hobo stepped out of the room for a bit, leaving Himiko with the lady. They didn't say anything, just sitting in silence. Before he came back in. Would you and your daughter be willing to come with me? I am taking you to see Izuku. Yes, Daddy. Yes, baby, we are going to see Daddy. Toga was led down the hallways. She noticed that the lady followed them as well as a police officer. She had expected to go towards the cells, but instead she was led into a conference room. When the door opened, she saw Izuku's shackled feet and hands. He immediately stood up as Himiko ran over to him. Himiko threw her arm around him and started crying, as did his daughter. It's okay, girls, it's okay. You're both safe. It's okay. What's this bullshit? You didn't negotiate for your own immunity as well, you dumbass. I'm sorry, baby. I had to make sure you and Eri were safe. It was then that Himiko noticed the strange man creature and other hero. Who are they? That is Nezu. He is the principal of UA, and that is the pro hero Vlad King. Izuku looked over at Eraserhead. Sup. Why don't we all take a seat? I would like to discuss something with the two of you. Nezu said. The couple looked at each other before sitting down. Eri wiggled out of Himiko's arms and into Izuku. She snuggled up to her daddy. The bad man, she said. Gone forever, baby, he can never hurt us again. Eri cried as her father and mother comforted her. Once she calmed down, they turned their attention to Nezu. We have some issues here. The first is the fact that Mr. Midoriya murdered Kichisaki while he was being taken into custody. After hearing the details and his reasoning, I understand, though I cannot condone his actions. The second is there's some question as to what happened to man that was called Ringmaster. His demise is, shall we say, suspicious. Third, we have concerns about Ms. Toga's ability to secure a stable income to provide for herself and the child, as she has no education. Fourth, the child's quirk is troublesome. While the two of you have developed a system for avoiding any sort of incident, there is concern what will happen when the child is in daycare. Fifth, there are no records of the child. Sixth, as the system has failed all of you. The obvious course of action is Mr. Midoriya, you will serve a lengthy term in Tartarus. The child will be taken into custody. Ms. Toga will be released on her own till she loses control and attacks someone in search of blood. Then she can join Mr. Midoriya in Tartarus. I would like to offer an alternative. I want the two of you to join us at UA. The teachers, sir. The couple, what? The child, Mousy. Nezu held up his hand. Are you beeping insane? Izuku said. Some have said so. But listen, the two of you will join us at UA, take remedial courses to get caught up, then pass the entrance exam and join the hero course. In return we will provide you housing and a stipend, medical care for Eri is the help she needs to learn how to control her power safely. When you graduate you will have an education as well as skills to support yourselves and her. Or the alternative. How about you release us, and we find our own way? Himiko said. How, Ms. Toga? Neither of you have any formal education, or skills that can legally be used. What do you get out of this? 1. I understand what it is like to be kept in a cage, used and abused. 2. If it wasn't for an act of kindness I wouldn't be here. This is my chance to repay that. 3. The kids that enter our hero course are blind to the evils of the world and could use someone to challenge those world views. 4. I want to see what you two can do. You intrigue me, in the closest thing to hell anyone could experience, with no reason you two came together and managed to work something out between you three. To the point that you Mr. Midoriya were willing to spend 50 years in Tartarus. I am sure Ms. Toga would trade places with you. Compassion and love should not be in either of you. Yet, what are the rules? Izuku asked. You two will be subject to weekly therapy sessions, as well have educational benchmarks that must be hit. If you commit no infractions as laid out for other students, you can do as you will. Just like any other college students. All you have to do is graduate and you will get your immunity. Clean records. Eri, Izuku asked. Safe housing, top-notch education, and a chance to make it in this world. Nezu responded. Izuku, I want all of us to be together. While the thought of school beeps, he makes a point. We need some way to provide for her. And this will keep you with us. Will you be my wife then? I already am, you idiot. They shared a brief kiss. Nezu, I have some more demands. Go ahead. I want Eri to officially be our daughter, adoption papers and everything. 2. I want to officially get married to Himi. You give us that and uphold your end of the bargain we are in. Excellent. He pulled out his phone and sent a message. Soon a woman walked in with a stack of papers. Just sign these and we can begin. Sir, can we talk to you? Outside. Absolutely. What would you three like to eat? Anything is fine as long as Eri can get some apples. Himi responded. We will take care of it. Nezu. Eraserhead, Vlad King. What are you playing at Nezu? Eraser said. I told both of you and them exactly what. Why? Eraser tell you don't see it. There is no reason for the two in there to have a sense of compassion for anyone. Vlad, they both have blood quirks. I have you sent both their files, read them over. Besides, I love a little chaos. He laughed as he started to walk down the hall. I trust the two of you to handle their transition to Housing Unit 115. I will prepare their educational plan. Himiko, Izuku, Eri. They read over the papers. Most if it was over their head, they just signed them. Really, one of your conditions is that we get married. I don't want anything to take you away from me. And also now no one can take Eri from us. Izuku was uncuffed and they ate a meal of burgers and fries. It was the best thing they had eaten ever. They were led out of the department and loaded into a car. They rode nervously till they came up to a house. Vlad handed them keys. Eraserhead gave them a tour. The home was furnished. There was food in the fridge, and some clean sweats. They would see to essentials tomorrow. Security monitoring was on the outside of the home, none inside. They were left alone. They locked every door and window. Himi moved the dresser to block the door. The family climbed into bed together. Eri fell asleep quickly, snuggled between her parents. Izuku leaned over and kissed Himi. You sleep first, I will wake you up for your shift. Izuku sat awake in the bed, looking out at the dark room. Himiko took a good look around before snuggling down with Eri. It was actually the best place she could remember. The pit, well, that was the pit. Her home was a step up from the pit. Not a great step up, but it was definitely better than the pit. But the pit brought her Eri and Izu. This though was as close to great as she could remember. When Izuku had placed his hand on her, the unfamiliar surroundings made her snap awake. But the way he had awakened her was not in an alert fashion. She gently transferred Eri to him, they exchanged kisses and he slipped into sleep. She just watched her favorite show, her husband and daughter sleeping all snuggled together. Himiko wanted to join them but they had to get used to this. She was going to have to take the lead. Izuku had no memory really of this kind of life and neither did Eri. She sat and listened. He awoke 4 hours later, on the dot. Slowly freeing himself from Eri, they slipped out of bed and quietly as possible moved the dresser from in front of the door before slipping out the room and to the kitchen. Neither of them knew how to cook. Izuku had never cooked anything in his life, they would just toss food at him, and he would eat. Himiko had an idea and knew how to make eggs and like a salad, maybe, but I was up to her to try. They searched the kitchen finding what they needed and they got to work. He went to Eri when she woke up calling for them. He carried her out as Himi served them food. It was the best thing they ever had. Not really, but freedom does that. The eggs were burnt, the salad had unpeeled cucumbers and carrots, but they didn't know how to cook the other things. They washed and cleaned the best they could, found cartoons for Emi just sat on the couch. It was nice. Eventually Himi took Eri to shower, he followed after they finished. At the knock at the door, Eri ran behind Himi as she pulled a knife from the butcher block and he went to the door. He opened it and there was a racer and some woman. Who's she? She is a fellow hero like me and my friend. Her name is Midnight. She was an attractive woman. He took a step back as they entered. Midnight eyes hardened for a minute as Himi put the knife back. They softened at Eri peeking out from behind Himi. You can call me Nimari. Pleased to meet you, Nimari. I am Izuku, that is my wife Himiko and our daughter Eri. Himiko walked over and extended her hand to the heroine. Eri waved and ducked behind her. So, what do we owe the honor, Eraser? Izuku asked. You can call me Aizawa. How was your first night? It was pleasant. We all slept in the same room. We tried to cook something, but we really don't know how. He spoke. Himi made the best breakfast I ever had. I am sure it wasn't, but it was the first thing we ever cooked. Or in years we really had a choice, Himiko said. Well, we are here to take the three of you clothes shopping. Nimari said. I can also arrange for some simple cooking lessons for you both as well. That would be good, Himiko said. We need to learn for Eri. So, if you guys are okay, we can go. The High Hills Mall. It was eventful to say the least. Izuku had never really thought about clothing. He was given what to wear. When he fought, when he would go on collections assignments, it was never his choice. Himiko was much better. The thing the couple agreed upon was that Eri looked great in anything. Aizawa had to calm Izuku down when people were looking at his wife and daughter in the wrong way. Nimari was heartbroken. Eri had no wants beyond mommy and daddy. Izuku was so under-socialized it was painful. Himiko was the most normal of the trio despite her manic behavior. They were waiting for violence. It was too peaceful, they were almost looking for it. They needed it, it was their status quo. Moments of peace followed by violence. She was positive if she told Izuku to go beat someone down so Eri could have a tiny candy, he would do so without question. Same for Himiko. Nothing else mattered to them but the three of them. The damn hero commission would just take them and treat them like disposable killers. It was dangerous, their dependency on each other. If one snapped, the other would just follow along. Watching them get haircuts now, that was a show. They were just staring daggers into the poor woman cutting Eri's hair. When Aizawa told him to sit for his haircut, Izuku just followed his orders. He would listen when Aizawa told him. He would respond to being told what to do if he felt it was good for his family. Nimari and Himiko. Nimari made a mental note to get Himiko on birth control stat. Himiko told her how they gave her a shot for that, but she couldn't remember when that was last. Also, as Himiko was very excited picking out new undergarments for her to show her Izuku. So do you and Izuku have beef often? Not as often as we like. It's a little hard with our unicorn, but we find the time. Do you enjoy it? With Izu? Yes. With the others, no way. But you have to do what you have to do. You know you don't have to do that anymore, right? No offense, Nimari, but I will believe that on a day-by-day basis when it doesn't happen. When did it happen? I was 13 on the streets. He promised me food and someplace warm. He lied. I cut his throat in his sleep. You know you probably should just say things like that out loud. Then don't ask the question, Nimari-chan. So Aizawa, what do you think our chances are? Honestly, no, lie to me and tell me I'm pretty before you give me the ol' high hard one. Slim, but it depends on how hard are you and Toga willing to work. You have no formal education. Toga has some but not much. You are going to be behind coming in on the educational part. The combat part you will be ahead. Yay, but we just need to get in. If we can get in, we can catch up. You guys gave the best incentive. Aries tomorrow. Himi and I would figure out a way to kill All Might himself to that. You really think you two can catch up like that? I know we can. We must. No choice. He smiled as the girls came out. Vicky's secrets. Did you find something nice, baby? Oh, you are going to love it, Izu. Himi purred at him. The food court. Nimari sat there smiling, watching the young family eat in the food court. The options were a little overwhelming for Eri and somewhat for Izuku, but they had all made their choices. They looked like they were eating top-quality 5-star restaurant fare. Instead of soba, Himi, pizza, Eri, Katistan, Izuku. She leaned over to Aizawa. So, what's going to happen? The rat is going to play his game. You know, when I first encountered Izuku, it was the desperation for his wife and child that got me. He never asked for himself. Just them. In another life I am sure he could have been a great hero. To live in that hell and still think of someone else first. So how much did we go over budget? I lost track after the first stop. I am good for half of whatever we end up at. I want to get Eri some toys. Maybe see I can interest the parents in some books. Are you going to reach out to Lunch Rush? He will be there tomorrow. What about dinner? I thought I could talk you into making something. She let loose a sigh. What about your patrol, by the way? I got it covered. Ah, Shota, you do have heart. Shut it, Nemi. Slowly, very slowly, Izuku and Himi learned to breath. They had to take some weird test from Mousy, who seemed very delighted by whatever they handed back. The first test was on a Monday. The family sat around a small table in brightly colored room. The parents were learning math, as Eri colored right next to them, looking at the other children running around on the other side of the room. The point of this was to slowly introduce Eri to other children that would be part of her class, while keeping her parents there so she would feel safe. It took 2 weeks before Eri first went to play with another little girl. In 2 more weeks she was playing with other kids. Is it wrong I don't want her to play with them? Himi asked Izuku. I want her with us. I understand, but she needs this. It's normal. We have to remember we are not in the pit anymore. So are we going to let her sleep in her own room tonight? I miss you, Izu. Like I really miss you. I do too. Nimari said that we need to stop barricading ourselves in the room. The security around the school, the alarms on the house, etc. Besides, they are both dead. That why we did it. Yes, our normal, as Hound Dog said. Our normal isn't other people's normal, it is what is best for us. The first day she was away was hard for the young parents, but as they had started their remedial classes in earnest, it found a rhythm: classes, workouts, dinner, movies, the park. They loved the park. When he finally saw it, Himi and Eri playing in the park in the sunshine, he cried. His girls immediately ran to him because something was wrong, but eventually, he calmed them down. It was simple, but everyone has their own definition of heaven. His was this: a park, sunshine, and his girls. They would get looks walking down the street. I mean, how many 17-year-olds do you see with a 6-year-old walking around? Especially when the child was calling them mommy and daddy. Himi and Izuku learned to deal with it, not to result to physically dealing with it. Our normal is not their normal. The two stood in front of Mousy as he looked over the written tests, his red pen sitting in his hands. They were nervous. If they passed, they were going to the next level. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya, you passed. Please prepare for to take your entrance exams. The test is in 2 days. If you manage to score in the top 10, I will double your stipend. Izuku and Himi smiled. If we both make it? Himi asked. It's tripled. If neither of you make it, I cut it in half. You're on. Izuku responded. The three of them walked hand in hand towards the exam area. Eri gave them big hugs and kisses as she left for the observation room with Mousy. Izuku and Himi stood outside the exam area, their foreheads resting against each other. For Eri, they said back and forth to each other. A quick kiss, they separated, entering their exam rooms. Himi sat at the desk, her pens in front of her. Her lucky unicorn eraser. She took a deep breath. They needed this. For Eri, they would get into this stupid hero course, pass all their dumb tests, graduate and make a life for her. She just sat there, eyes closed, running her mantra through her head. The instructions drifted into her ears. Begin. Himi's eyes snapped open. Izuku sat there looking at all the other participants entering. They were all dressed in their school uniforms, and here he was, black shorts, red shirt, matching shoes, hair tied back in a ponytail. Lucky unicorn eraser on his desk. He listened intently to the instructions. Begin. They barely finished with a seconds to spare. It was hard watching others finish well before them and leave the room. They even saw ectoplasm enter the room and escort some out. They found each other and made their way with ease to the cafeteria to find some food, choosing to eat outside. They spoke little about the test, neither sure they passed. They just lied back in the grass holding hand till it was time to head over for the practical. This they were confident in. As they found their seats, they sat and listened as instructions were read out. Getting a chuckle as President Mike was interrupted in the middle of his speech by some guy with glasses. They looked two different testing areas. As they left, they both turned and handed each other vials of blood. Letting out a laugh, they headed off to get changed. Izuku sat in the room after changing quickly. Sitting on the bench, he sat there. Focusing. He had done this for most of his life. This was easy. Violence was a warm hug. Himi changed quickly, securing her two blades in Izuku's vial. There was not going to be as much blood today. But there would be some. She was getting so excited. Izuku was so going to get it tonight. He was sure to be pumped up after. A good fight always did something to her man. He had not had one since the pits. Stepping off the bus, Izuku unzipped his hoodie and set it aside as he started stretching. His dark green boxing shorts, black tank top. He started firing off punches, getting limber. He pulled the vial out and poured it in his mouth. Immediately his quirk activated. Blood-red wrapping slithered out his arms, wrapping around forearms and hands. He was bouncing, he was excited. He wasn't happy about fighting in the pits, but he did love good fight. Himi limbered up, ignoring the looks from the guys or her skin-tight suit. She stood up and drank her precious vial. With a smile she drew her blades. Pity it was robots. Begin. Izuku and Himi rushed off into the city. Hunters on a mission. They left destruction in their wake. Once Himi had dulled her blades, she ducked into an alley, turning into her favorite form. She was so familiar with it, it was like wearing her own. His higher strength was a boon. She lost some speed but was more than adequate for dealing with the robots. When the 0-pointers arrived, she began to make her way back to the entrance. She saw some people struggling. A girl with pink skin was calling for help, trying to free someone trapped in some rubble. Himi hesitated. She remembered calling for help and being ignored. Till she found her family. With a sigh he ran over. Izuku watched as the panic was spreading. With a sigh he began to fall back. Help! Hey, someone help! He turned and saw a girl with red hair in a side ponytail stuck, trying to lift some rubble off herself with rather large hands. Izuku saw some look back, but they just turned and ran. He saw a group near each other. One of them was large, looking very muscular with peculiar lips. They were all bleeding. He ran over, they looked at him and yelled something as he ran his hand across their cuts. As he ran back, licked the blood off his fingers. His strength swelled. Oh, that's the shit right there. He came to stop by the girl bending down. Together. She nodded. They pushed and threw off the large piece of debris. He could hear the robot coming closer. Can you stand? No. I think I busted my ankle. He bent down, helping her up, and they tried to make their escape. The 0-pointer turned the corner, barreling down on them. Its massive fist reared back and came straight for them. They turned, they both pivoted and swung. He saw her fist enlarge and this strange red energy course through her arm. He pulled all his strength to his arm. the wraps glowing and looking more like metal bands. Blood explosion. One punch smash. The arm of the zero-pointer crumpled before exploding off. He saw her arm. It was a canard blackened mess. His was broken as well. She gave him a smile. You know you're kind of cute. She then passed out. With his good arm he caught her slowly slumping to the ground as his own strength faded. He saw the zero-pointer rise. Well beep. Time. It rang out over the field. The machine stopped. He smiled as he faded out. Recovery Girl was making her way handing out gummies and a few kisses here and there. Then she stumbled on that blonde idiot's protege. Unconscious lying on top of Izuku, both their arms busted. They had small smiles on their faces. You're lucky I found you and not Himiko, dear boy. The robots came, loaded the pair onto stretchers and took them out. Izuku woke up staring at the ceiling in the medical wing. His daughter snuggled on one side, Himi next to the bed in a chair. She was smiling. So I didn't know you liked redheads. Neither did I, but I love blondes. Good answer, Izu. The old lady says we can go home as soon as you wake up. You can tell me how you broke your arm. Is the girl okay? She busted her arm too when we punched that giant robot. Why did you do that? It was that Ergo's fault. Fair then. Hey, I meet this girl with pink skin, she seemed nice. They made their way out of the medical center and over toward the monitoring center. They paused at the door. Izuku pulled her close and into a deep kiss. As pulled back, Himi smiled. It's okay, love. She knew he was nervous about the results. So was she. Also part of their minds were scared about the punishment. Not the loss of money, but if there was some sort of physical punishment. They hadn't experienced anything like that, but it was ingrained in their mind from the pits. A plan had already been formed between the two. As long as nothing happened to Eri, they would endure it. They always did. They would play the game, and once they graduated, they would burn this place to the ground. They could endure pain. They had all their life. Neither of them had expected to get moments of heaven before. Izuku seeing his wife and daughter play in the park. Himi seeing family all curled up on a couch watching a movie in peace, tucking her daughter into bed, making love to her husband, and sleeping peacefully on full stomach. She had dreamed of such an evening. Where Izu wouldn't have to go to the pits, Eri wasn't taken and experimented on, or that she hadn't had to go, do something for the ringmaster. She had told herself that if she had one night like that she could die happy. She was wrong. One night wasn't enough, she wanted more. Every night, every day. She wanted to raise Eri, have a baby of her own if she could. Live in a nice house and simply live. She wanted the fantasies that she used to think about before she went to the pits. The same ones she thought had gone away forever when she was there. She was going to grab a hold of those dreams and drag them into reality. Nothing was going to take this away from her. Not if they wanted to continue existing, that is. Upon entering the room, the sound that always made anything better hit their ears immediately. Mommy, Daddy. Eri bolted over and crashed into them, hugging their legs before attempting to climb her daddy like a tree. He would lift her up, receive his hug and kiss, then she would dive out if his arms to Himi, repeating the process. They turned and looked at the assembled faculty. Nezu, Aizawa, Nimari, Hound Dog, and Hizashi. Himi could tell something good was about to happen. She could see it in Nemu's face. Nimari and Himi had spent the most time together, therapy and Nimari teaching Himi how to do things around the house. Himi was rather surprised at how domestic Nimari was despite her public persona. Well, Izuku asked. Nezu leaned forward and smiled. You both passed. Not only did you both pass, you did so in ways that no one would have ever expected. You both did good enough on the written exam. We are all very proud of you for that, but make sure you continue studying because it will only get harder from here on out. The practical was in your wheelhouse, but not only did you two destroy enough robots, you also managed to amass hero points. What are hero points? Himi questioned. Well, little listener, those are a hidden part of the exam. The practical exam is geared towards those with physical quirks, while those who do not possess those are placed in a difficult position. So, there are hero points. How do the candidates react when other students are trouble or in need of help? So like my quirk. Not really suited for fighting robots or attacking a giant monster head. If it wasn't for the fact that I had my blades and Izu's blood, then I would have had a much more difficult time. Exactly. The test itself is terrible and a lot of students get moved to non-hero courses and only have a hope of making into the hero course via the sports festival. Aizawa said. But this year we finally have something different. 1. The class size has been increased, and 2. We are going to be inviting the ones with the most potential back for a second test. Ms. Midoriya heard someone calling for help, went back, and assisted them out of danger. Mr. Midoriya, you saw your fellow students running ignoring the calls for help and you acted. Not only did you retrieve the young lady from the rubble, the two of you managed to destroy a zero-pointer. Now before I go any further, I want both of you tell me why. Himi answered quickly, no one ever came to help me when I called for help. When I would scream or cry for someone to help me, no one ever came. I know what that is like. No one helped. I wish that if Eri was ever in that position, that someone would help. Izuku said, I mean, it was probably dumb of us to punch the robot and then pass out. That would not be good in real battle, but, he shrugged. Aizawa smiled behind his scarf. He was going to point that out and giving Izuku a bit of scolding, but the young man was aware of the problem without him having to say anything. Exactly. Nezu clapped with glee. This response should not be present in either of your, unless you were running to save the other or Eri. In my studies of human behavior, this still seeming sense of empathy should be lacking severely in either of you. It is delightful. I cannot wait to see this in the classroom. You both passed, your stipend has been increased. You two will enrolled into Class 1A and be moving to the dorms. Now before you say anything, Cementos is the process of creating an attached cottage to keep your family unit together, and if you remember per our agreement, you two have the same requirements of other students and this is part of that. Also some interaction with people your own age would be good for you too. Nimari said. I guess that's reasonable. I think it would be best if we moved in as soon as possible so Eri and us can get adjusted. Eri clung to her. Himi, why do we have to leave our house? It's okay sweetie, we are just moving across campus to another house, all your stuff will come with us. It is so mommy and daddy can meet our classmates for school. Like when you started to go play with Mika and Ren. Eri thought hard about this before nodding her head. As long as we are together. Always baby, Himi said, giving her a kiss. Over the next few weeks, the family got themselves moved and packed. The only major adjustment was going from 2-story home to a 1-story. So, there was no change. They were able to move in a whole month before the beginning of the term. Eri had great fun running around the empty dorm once construction was made. Her epic hiding skills were undone many a time by her silent giggles. The things they had accumulated fit into the house, by that it was mostly clothes and decorations for Eri's room. Izuku came in from a workout to find Nimari and Himi looking at pieces of cloth and holding colors to the wall. Being the fool that he was, he ignored it till he came in and found buckets of paint and boxes. He then noticed their bank account was quiet a bit lighter. He was about to complain until Himi and Eri emerged from the back in overalls and painter's caps. Aizawa and Nimari came over to teach them, mainly watch and chuckle as they painted the walls and hung drapes. Izuku didn't quite understand why they were doing all this until after a few days it was all done. Home, he whispered. He didn't quite understand it, but he could feel it in his chest. This place with the changes, standing there with his arm around Himi and Eri hugging his leg. He knew it, this was home. That what Himi and Nimari were doing, the paint, drapes, and tables, it was all to make it feel like this. For the next 3 years this was home. Then they would leave and build a new one, and a new one after that. But it would all be home. They could have it, and now he wanted it more than ever. He whispered to Himi, I love it and I love you. She turned to him with a smile. I love you too. As they leaned into a kiss, the giggle from their feet interrupted them. Me too, I want kisses. Izuku put her in between them and they showered her cheeks with kisses. They meet the first resident a week before anyone was scheduled to move in, and meet was a strong word. Izuku was enjoying his breakfast when suddenly the peace was disturbed when there was a rather large sound outside. Eri, panic room now, Izuku shouted as Himi threw him a vial of blood before he ran outside. He saw a teen panting on his knees. He had half-white and red hair and was coughing up blood on the concrete. Kneeling next to him was a woman few years older with mostly white hair with some red patches. She looked like she had taken some sort of fire attack. Both of their clothes looked worse for wear. He downed the vial of Himi had tossed him as he ran over, activating his quirk. The woman spun on him, ice forming in front of her palms. Izuku slid to a stop, his hands in front of him. Whoa, hold on a second. I am not here to necessarily attack you. My family lives there. He pointed to the cottage behind him. Please help Shoto, he is coming, she said as she began to scan the skies. He ran over and knelt next to the teen, quickly dipping his fingers in the pool of blood on floor and put some in his mouth. Not physically strong, but every little bit helps. Where the hell is the staff? Hey man, you okay? Who is after you guys? The teen looked at Izuku, allowing Izuku to see his scared face. Our father. There were several things Izuku expected might happen today. Playing games with Eri, sure. Afternoon delight with Himi when Eri took her nap. More than likely. Solid workout, of course. Finding the bleeding children of the number 2 hero outside while their father seemed to be the one that put them in that state. No, not just no, but hell no. Yet here he was. He had some blood from the guy and his wife, and was he really thinking about attacking Endeavor? Oh, hell to the YEA. You two will return to the house this instant. Endeavor bellowed. Izuku saw the looks that formed on the Shoto and Fuyumi. Much to his dissatisfaction, he recognized that look. It was a look he had seen on Himi's face, and he had worn himself out many, many times in the pit. It was a look of death would be a better alternative, or that I am going to fight with every ounce in me to not let that happen. The determination in their eyes was inspiring. Izuku stood in front of the downed boy and Himi circled to the side, her eyes focused on the number 2 hero. Listen, I don't know what this is about, but I suggest you leave. The faculty will be here soon, and I don't really want them to have to carry you out on a stretcher. I don't know WHO you think you are boy, but you better consider WHO you are talking to. This is a family matter and doesn't concern YOU. That may be the case, but 1. They obviously don't want anything to do with you, and 2. You brought this to my front yard, so now it is my problem. Why are you doing this? Fuyumi asked Izuku. The look in the two of your eyes. It says you would rather die than go with him. I don't know what is happening, but I know that look. Now can the two of you fight? The heterochromia teen rose to his feet. Yes, let's see if we can bring him down then. Fuyumi and Shota suddenly generated ice and launched attacks at their father from his left and right. Endeavor sneered and released his fire, melting the ice almost instantly. Suddenly a knife found its way and stabbed him in the thigh, breaking his concentration as the ice swelled again and crashed against his sides, crushing him and holding him in place. Get me up there, Izuku shouted to the ice users. Shoto nodded and launched Izuku towards his father via an ice pillar. Izuku reared back with all he could and unleashed a vicious right hook right into Endeavor's jaw, drawing blood that coated Izuku wraps. As Izuku landed, he brought his crimson prize to his lips. His strength surged. Endeavor may not have a strength quirk, but damn, this man was strong. Endeavor roared, his flames exploding out, bursting him free of his ice prison. As he landed on his feet, Himi dashed in, attempting to slash him. He expertly dodged and managed to land left hook to her side, which sent her tumbling. Fuyumi raced over, taking a defensive position in front of Himi, unleashing a barrage of ice, as Izuku raced in. Endeavor fired his flames at his daughter's attack and slipped a right jab at his other assailant. Izuku ducked to the right, but he missed with his follow-up punch to only get meat with a knee to the gut. Before Endeavor could follow up, an ice lance pierced his side. He growled at Shoto. He then screamed when he felt the knife in his back being ripped out. His scream was cut short when a pillar of ice collided with his head. Endeavor whirled and fired a flame jet at Himi before she could dodge a wall of ice that appeared in front of her, stopping the blast. You never learn, do you, old man? The newcomer shouted. Natsuo, Fuyumi shouted. Endeavor roared with fury, his fire melting the ice around him. His children were attacking him. Endeavor's fire increased in intensity, causing his attackers to fall back behind ice shields that were continually melting. Hellflame in fur. Suddenly the fire stopped. Endeavor looked around as his quirk had been shut off. He saw Eraserhead and the faculty coming near. Izuku saw his opportunity and raced in, delivering a leaping Superman punch, as cleared past the shocked Endeavor. All three of his children launched simultaneous attacks, encasing him in ice. As Endeavor quirk returned because of Eraserhead's limitations, he was about to begin again when a pink fog enveloped him, and he fell into a deep slumber. Izuku and Himi walked over to the siblings, nursing some pain. The two older ones, Fuyumi and Natsuo, had gathered around their youngest one as he had the most damage. Aizawa walked over to Izuku and Himi. "What in the hell were you two thinking attacking the number 2 hero?" Himi was about to answer when suddenly she said, "Eri is in the panic room, I will be right back." She bolted to the cottage. Fuyumi and Shoto came crashing into the front yard, and when I went to check on them it was obvious that Shoto was in bad shape. Then Endeavor shows up. I felt that my safety was in jeopardy, so under Article 32 of the Student Charter, I used my quirk to defend myself. It also falls under Article 19 of my contract with Nezu that I am allowed to defend my wife and child in the manner that I deem fit, if I use non-lethal tactics unless it is deemed otherwise. Izuku said with a smile. "God damn it, Izuku," Aizawa said as he stopped to add eye drops to his eyes. He was about to say more when a silver missile raced past him, tackling Izuku. Eri was crying and holding onto Izuku. Izuku patted her back and whispered comfort in her ear, a look of love and gentleness on his face. Himi smiled as she walked over to Shoto with a first aid kit to offer aid as Recovery Girl was still en route to their location. After Izuku had managed to calm Eri, he walked over to join his wife. Looking at Shoto, he extended his hand and smiled at the teen. "Izuku Midoriya, Class 1A. Shoto looked up at the green-haired teen holding a child and extending a hand. Shoto took the sight in. This teen had run out and helped him and his sister without question. He could see the teen had scars covering his body and had obviously had a hard life, yet he still helped them. After a brief pause, Shoto extended his hand. "Shoto Todoroki 1A. Nice to meet you, Shoto. This is my daughter Eri. Say hi, Eri." Eri, whose face was buried in her father's shoulder, turned her head slightly and muttered a quiet hello. "And you have met my wife Himiko." The siblings all had a look of surprise. Not only had these two run into battle with their father, not only were they students, but they were also married. With a kid, Fuyumi immediately could tell that the girl was adopted, but who in their right mind would trust a child to children? Somewhere Nezu sneezed. Himiko stood and walked over to Izuku, taking Eri from his arms. "Recovery Girl will be here soon, but that should do the job until she gets here." Himi smiled and extended her hand, introducing herself properly to Shoto. Soon they all were introduced. As Recovery Girl arrived, their family stepped back, and after getting permission from Aizawa they withdrew to their home. The siblings along with Vlad all departed for the recovery wing, but not before Fuyumi looked over at the sleeping form of their father. "What is going to happen now?" she asked Midnight and Eraserhead. Midnight turned her attention to the girl. "Vlad King is going to take all 3 of your statements, and once this dumbass wakes up, we will take his. As far as what happens from there, it will depend on the results of the investigation. Your little brother is already enrolled her. Your other brother was here by chance meeting with a friend of his, and well, there is you. But don't worry dear, we will make sure all of you are safe." Endeavor. Consciousness slowly found its way to him. As he came through, he was in a dull gray room, his arms behind his back, and he was handcuffed with quirk suppression cuffs. His mind began to replay the encounter in his mind. Not only had Shoto and Fuyumi tried to run from his home and defied his authority, but somehow Natsuo had become involved. Then there was those 2 other meddlesome interlopers, the blonde girl and green-haired boy. He admitted that his anger had clouded his mind during the fight, but if it wasn't for Midnight sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Part of him was impressed and infuriated that his 3 children had worked together to attempt to fight him, though they had only used ice. He couldn't blame the oldest 2, but Shoto's stubborn determination to spit in his face had finally crossed the line. His musings were broken when the door to the room opened and in walked Nezu, perched on the shoulder of Aizawa. "Well, hello Enji, how was your nap?" Nezu said with a smile in his trademark high-pitched voice. "Damn it Nezu, get these cuffs off me. This is a private matter between me and my children." "You see, that is where you were wrong Enji. It was a private matter until you brought it to my doorstep." Now it is my business. You assaulted 3 students, not something I can overlook. I am afraid official complaints will be filed and there is the question of charges as well. What are you playing at, you damn rat? I am not playing at anything. I just want you to be aware of what is going to happen. Aizawa will not be removing your cuffs but will instead be escorting you to a transport that will be taking you police station where they will be a proper questioning. What charges? Assault. Assault with a quirk, unauthorized quirk usage, trespassing, assault with intent to cause harm, false imprisonment, coercion, domestic violence, child abuse, and I am sure some other things will come up during the investigation. You really think you can make all that stick? I don't need to. You just being charged is going to drag you out of the top 10, maybe even lower. The story will get out, trust me, Nezu said, the last part dripping with malice. A small vibration was heard as Nezu looked at his watch. Oh, look at that, the HPSC is calling. Excuse me, I must take this call. With that, Nezu leapt from Aizawa's shoulder and exited the room. I always thought you were an asshole, Enji, but I didn't realize how much of a piece of shit you really were until today. Aizawa said. You can shut your mouth, you know not what you speak. Really, I read your children's statement. I wonder what more we will learn when we talk to Rei. Endeavor's eyes widened. Oh, Yae, Nezu found her. Nimari has already made contact with her. You know they went to school together, right? Oh, I mean of course you do, she was at your wedding. Nice facility you locker her in, by the way. How much did the HPSC charge you for that one? It doesn't really matter, Aizawa, I will be simply fine. I'll make an apology and step away before coming back. Humbled and such bullshit. I will be right back to where I belong in what, a year or 2 tops. Endeavor sneered. You think so? Do you really think the HPSC is going to save your ass like in? Yea, we know about that too. Endeavor couldn't contain the shock. There was no way, only 4 people who knew about that. The president, the fixer himself, and the 4th was dead. Dawning comprehension passed Endeavor's face. Ah, there it is. I understand why Nezu gets such enjoyment out of it. You know, I used to think the rat was crazy, but the more I learn I understand 2 things. 1. He is crazy. 2. Sometimes you need to introduce some chaos into the system. I hope you freeze in hell, Enji. Flashback. Nimari and Aizawa sat stunned. Sitting in front of them was Kana Tsutsumi, Lady Nagant. There in front of them was the very woman who a few years ago had killed the head of the Hero Commission and died in a battle with the high-speed hero, a clock in the wild, beepcats. Yet here she was drinking tea in Nezu's office. Nimari leapt over the table and almost tackled Kana out of her seat. Nezu looked at Aizawa. Would you care to join me down the rabbit hole? Kana looked over a crying Nimari's shoulder at Aizawa. Come join us, we have cookies. She said with a smirk, her eyes damp. End flashback. Nezu walked back in with a cold smile. Endeavor sat shaking as his gaze fell upon the principal. Now Enji, if you want any sort of life, this is what you are going to do. The Todoroki family. Shoto sat in the infirmary of UA with both his siblings sitting on either side of him, Fuyumi to the left and Natsuo to the right. So, you 2 de-iced to finally break free from the old man. Natsuo said, breaking the silence. After you left, he just got worse with Shoto. Then with Shoto leaving I had no reason to stay anymore. I know he wouldn't just let me go. He had said somethings. Fuyumi shivered, her voice wavered. I had always hoped that we could be a family. I realized that we can be, just without him. Tears pooled at the corner of her eyes. She quickly wiped them away. What were you doing here, Natsuo? Shoto asked. I was visiting my girlfriend. She is in her 2nd year in the business course. Her name is Hina. I was leaving when I saw the asshole come barreling overhead. He responded. You have a girlfriend. Why didn't you say something? Fuyumi asked. I was going to. That is what we were talking about. But what are you going to do, Fuyumi? Shoto is starting school here soon. I was still working that out when we had to run. I need to do my internship so I can finish my teaching degree. The door to the room opened and in walked recovery girl, Vlad King, with the smiling principal of UA riding on his shoulder. Am I mouse, a bear, or a dog? Neither, I am the principal of UA. The 3 Todoroki children turned and looked at him. What is going to happen? Fuyumi said, standing in front of her brothers. There is no need to fret, Ms. Todoroki. You, father, is being taken care of as we speak. You three have nothing to fear there. I couldn't help but overhear that you need an internship for your teaching degree. I have an opportunity for you. You see, we here at UA have an opening for a teacher's assistant in our daycare program as well as dorm mom position for our first-year hero course. It would include room and board, a generous salary, and allow you to be near Shoto as he begins his journey. If such a thing would interest you. Shoto spoke first as Fuyumi was in shock. I would like that, Fuyumi. Fuyumi looked over at Shoto, a light smile crossing her lips. I would like that too, Shoto. Oh, and your mother is being transferred to our care as well. She should be here by the end of the week. WWWHHHHAATTTTT. Yelled the Todorokis. The Midoriyas. After the morning incident, the daughter decided that being away from both parents were out of the question, so another of Izuku's plan for the day went out the window. They both had to be interviewed by the police and a member of the HPSC. Luckily for the interviewers, Nimori was present for the interview as questions were asked about the fitness of Izuku and Himiko to be parents in rather backhanded manners. After they left, the oldest and youngest Todorokis came by to express their thanks for earlier. Izuku and Himiko were slightly cautious, but with some encouragement from Nimori they were able to offer some tea and snacks while they talked some. Izuku and Himiko talked with Fuyumi. Shoto didn't talk very much and seemed to be vastly confused about Eri climbing on her parents or running up for hugs. It was her parents' reaction of providing hugs and answering her questions without anger or yelling. Shoto had recently understood that his upbringing was far from normal and that in fact it was wrong. He didn't understand what normal would be. Izuku and Himi walked their guest to the door. When the door closed, the two of them took a deep breath. That was a lot harder than I thought, said Izuku. I know, I kept wondering if they were going to attack at some point. Dealing with people beeps, she replied. Yay, but we must get better at it for Eri's sake. We are pushing her to make friends, so we need to try also. Doesn't mean it isn't mentally taxing. Himiko smiled and pulled Izuku into a deep kiss. What do you say to after dinner you and I take a bath together? That sounds like a wonderful idea. The next few days, Izuku and Himiko decided to continue to push themselves, saying hello to the Fuyumi and Shoto whenever they saw them. They even helped them get some belongings moved into the main dorm building. Fuyumi even made soba for them as a thank you. Eri seemed to take a particular interest in Shoto, peeking at him and watching him a lot. When asked about it by her parents, she told them that he was sad. That his eyes told her so, that they reminded her of her eyes before she got her mommy and daddy. It was the day before the rest of the class was supposed to move in that the news of Endeavor's arrest had been leaked. As details were not readily apparent to the media, the news cycle was filled with speculation and rampant rumors. Shoto and his sister paid the news scant attention as this was the day that their mother was coming to UA. Shoto looked at his sister, his eyes downcast, his hands balled in his lap. How do I face her? What if she still hates me? Oh, Shoto. Mom instantly regretted what happened. I am sure she is just as scared of you hating her. What she did was terrible. I am sure she understands that. Everything will not be magically fixed now. It is still going to take time. I am mad at her for what happened. I understand, but it doesn't mean I am not upset at what she did to you. And that is okay. Shoto looked at Fuyumi as his sister took a seat next to him and pulled him into a hug. It's okay to be upset. It is okay to be unsure. We can take our time. You. A is not going to take her away. They are going to make sure she is getting the proper help she needs. We should do the same, Shoto. Nezu talked about therapy being open to us as well. I already have signed up, you should too. Shoto leaned into his sister. Fuyumi had always been there for him. She had been his mom and his sister. She was the one to step in and try and keep his father away, to sing him lullabies and read him stories. In all the anger, hate, abuse, and chaos of living with their father, she had been the safe harbor. She always tried to take care of him. She took care of the house, went to school, and found time to hold their family together. Shoto slipped his arms around his sister and hugged her tight. Fuyumi was surprised Shoto didn't show a lot of affection. She rested her head on top of his and just held him. I never got a chance to say thank you, Fuyumi. After mom, you were my mom and my big sister. You always did the best you could for me. If you think that it is a good idea, then I will join you in therapy. I don't want to be like this. I want to be able to have friends. I don't want to be alone like him. You don't have to be, neither of us do. We can start new. Now let's go re-meet our mother. Today was the day. Well, for Izuku and Himiko, it was going to be an interesting day, as they would be welcoming their new classmates, or at the very least observing them through the window. Hoping to see your redhead again, Himiko teased as she whispered into his ear. It was more of an orange, but are you looking for your pink alien? He responded by taking a drink of his coffee. She was cool and pretty hot. I wouldn't toss her out of bed. I love it when you talk dirty, he said with a smirk. Of course, you do. You are a man after all. Izuku raised his eyebrow. Last I checked, and last you checked. They turned to each other and started to kiss as the kiss deepened and a giggle disturbed it. They turned and saw Eri rubbing her eye carrying one of her stuffed animals. Silly. Izuku walked over and scooped up his daughter. What do you want for breakfast? Pancakes, she yelled. You are going to turn into a pancake, he retorted. Then I will have to smother you in syrup and eat you all up. He buried his face in her tummy and made nom-nom sounds to the delight of Eri. Her giggles filled the room as Himi made her way to the kitchen to begin cooking breakfast for her family. Shoto. He woke up and wandered downstairs. Fuyumi had made a big fuss about today. As the new dorm mom, she had been up late baking cookies and cupcakes. He came down and saw her and their mother sitting in the kitchen. On many fronts, it was a strange sight, one seeing his mother, two seeing his mother. Their reunion had been tearful, but there was still a tension that lingered. He wanted to hold her and be comforted, his mother wanted to same, but there was something between them. It wasn't a mystery. He was angry, and she was guilty. The therapist had identified it for him quickly. It was strange to sit and talk to someone for a few hours 3 times a week, but he liked the aura the man gave. Calm and peaceful, the man didn't force him to talk, didn't press, and let Shoto dictate the pace. A lot of his talking was about Izuku Midoriya and his family. He liked to talk about Eri. The therapist had told him that the reason for his fascination with the little girl was a result of his troubled upbringing, that seeing a child interact with her parents with no violence or tension between the parents had sparked a sense of longing for a similar experience. Shoto was agitated at the thought that he wanted such an experience with Endeavor, but as they talked it out, it was more of a wish for a better life than what he had experienced. That it was good for him to see how a semi-normal family operated. Shoto was confused by that statement, but the therapist would not elaborate. In the end, Shoto realized that he liked the Midoriyas. Izuku and Himi had leapt to their defense without expectation of any sort of reward. When he asked the couple about what had made them want to be heroes, especially with a young child. I don't, Himi said. I want to be able to take care of Eri, and I just have to do this so I can do that. For Eri, Izuku said. There was no talk about being number one or being the best. Himiko just wanted to take care of their daughter, and Izuku was doing it for her. He wondered what that was like, but then he thought of Fuyumi, how she would do things for him like make cold soba for dinner when he knew she didn't like it. Or tuck him in, check on him, everything. Shoto realized that he wanted to be a hero for her, so he could protect her, and make life better for her. If he could do that, then he could consider it a success. He didn't need to be number one to spite Endeavor, he didn't need to do it to prove anything to that monster, he could be a hero just to make things better. Little steps. Shoto walked into the kitchen. He wished Fuyumi good morning before he reached out and gently squeezed his mother's hand briefly. Good morning, Mom, I am happy to see you. He offered a small smile. Fuyumi smiled and turned quickly so her brother wouldn't see the tear she disposed of. Rei Todoroki smiled at her son. Good morning, Shoto. I am happy to see you too, Rei said with a smile. It wasn't much, but it was something. Rome wasn't built in a day, and her relationship with her son could not be rebuilt in days, weeks, or months. It would take time. Thankfully, for now, they had time. The arrival. Soon enough the students started to arrive. After some prodding from Aizawa and Nimari, the Midoriya joined the Todoroki in welcoming the new arrivals. Rei was enjoying interacting with Eri, while she watched Fuyumi greet each student and direct them to their assigned room. She got joy out of watching her daughter push her son into introducing himself and having him help with boxes. Shoto wanted to say no when Fuyumi volunteered him, but he did find it amusing that Izuku was being roped into assisting as well. Eri had somehow convinced Fuyumi that she could check the boxes, which the parents were finding adorable as were those moving in. Himiko was keeping an eye on Eri and helping to direct traffic as she was using the opportunity to scout their classmates. Izuku was doing the same to see if he got any strange vibes from anyone. First to arrive was a cute brunette with a permanent blush on her cheeks by the name of Ochako Uraraka. She didn't have very much, so the boys were able to handle everything in one go. Next was a blonde boy with a back streak, Denki Kaminari, who arrived with his parents. Rikido Sato was next, to whom Izuku struck up a conversation as they were in the same testing area. The boy was tall with thick brown hair and large lips. Suyu Asui, call her Su, and her family arrived. Her siblings immediately saw Eri, and the three of them under the supervision of Rei had run off to the play area. She had a frog quirk, with large eyes. She blushed a little when Himiko commented on how pretty they were. A spiky redhead named Eijiro Kirishima arrived next. He gladly accepted the help, especially when Ochako, who had got her meager belongings taken care of, had made his weight set super easy to transport. Ochako had joined the welcoming committee. A squeal to end all squeals erupted when Himi saw her pink-skinned girl. Izuku smiled watching Himi skip outside following the girl to meet the girl's parents. Mina Ishido was super excited. Not only was Eijiro in the same class, but Himiko was also. Tenya Ida and his brother were next to arrive, along with several sidekicks. Fortunately, he didn't have to sign too many autographs, but Izuku and Himiko noticed him giving them long looks as he walked in with his brother. Yuga Aoyama stepped out and dazzled, much to the amusement of Izuku and Ochako. His over-the-top hello had them wondering, till his parents stepped out and did the same. The twinkling blonde happily accepted the help. Koji Koda arrived along with his mother, who shared the boys' rocky appearance. They were both rather shy and took their belonging up on their own. Mezzo Shoji simply said hello and carried his luggage on one trip all on his own. Kyoka Jiro and her parents were another story. It took all the helpers to get the instruments and boxes upstairs. Itsuka Kendo stepped out of the moving van and stretched. She was nervous, wondering if she was going to get along with her new dorm mates. Her friend Setsuna had gotten in as well, but she was in 1B. Then she saw him, the boy from the test. He was walking over. Izuku walked over with a smile and extended his hand. Hey, I'm the cute boy from the test, Izuku Midoriya. Kendo, with a smirk, who said you were cute? You did right before you passed out after I saved you. First off, I saved you and I sure as hell didn't say that. Izuku flashed her a smile. I believe I saved you from being trapped and then the 0-pointer. I saved you from the 0-pointer. She smiled back. Well, how about we agree we both knocked that thing on its ass? Fine, for the sake of starting off the school year nice, Itsuka said, and she played with her ponytail, a thing her mom noticed. Deal. Need any help with your boxes? Yeah, that would be cool, but don't you have to get your stuff taken care of? No, already all situated. Itsuka heard a cough behind her and saw her parents there smirking at her. Introductions, dear, her mother said. After the introduction and Izuku had departed with her father, her mother leaned in and whispered, is that the cute boy you mentioned? Mom. Itsuka responded with a blush. More arrivals. 7. Count that 7 moving vans arrived for Momo Yaoyorozu, and a small army of professional movers. The stunning girl stopped some traffic with her beauty. It was Eri that brought everyone back when she had run up and asked if Momo was a princess. Toru Hagakure arrived and became an immediate favorite of Himiko. Fumikage Tokiyami and Dark Shadow arrived. He gladly accepted the help and seemed rather polite. He seemed upset when Eri ran and hid from him. Izuku and Himiko gave each other a look. Izuku signaled he would talk to Fumikage and that she should go check on Eri. Once they were in the room, Izuku gave a brief explanation that Eri had a really bad experience with someone with a bird mask. Fumikage nodded. That is most tragic. I hope my vestige does not bring the young girl nightmares. Izuku answered the boy's fears the best he could. Minoru Mineta had arrived with his parents, while everyone was distracted. Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku was on his way back down when he heard a voice that he had thought he had forgotten, but instead, it had been pushed deep down into the dark corners of his mind. Deku, is that beeping you? How in the beep did they let you in here? Izuku looked down into the lobby, and there he was, older of course, but there stood Katsuki Bakugo, or Kachin another lifetime ago. Izuku said nothing and continued his walk down the stairs. He caught Himi looking over at him with Eri from the kitchen, her eyes narrowing, as she casually reached for a knife to slice an apple for their daughter. What the hell is a useless ass like you doing here? There is no way they let you in here with that villainous quirk of yours. Izuku walked into the entryway. Saying nothing, he went to walk past the angry blonde. He felt a hand land on his shoulder, and a slight explosion followed. Your superior is talking to you, you piece of shit. You better answer me. You have 2 seconds to remove your hand from me before I break it, Izuku said, looking over his shoulder at Bakugo, his eyes narrowed, a snarl present on his face. Beeping make me then. Izuku was about to do just that when he felt a cooling gentle touch on his arm. He turned and was looking directly into Fuyumi's eyes. Please Izuku, let me handle this. Izuku just nodded. Katsuki Bakugo, you are to remove your hand from your classmate this instance. Failure to do so will result in immediate disciplinary action. Classmate. Yes, Mr. Bakugo, your classmate. As it is, I will be reporting this incident directly to the staff. If you continue this course, then I can assure you that should leave your belongings here in the common room, as your expulsion will be forthwith. Katsuki was about to say something, but he noticed a boy with different colored hair standing off to this woman's side. They were related. He could see a ball of ice in the guy's hand. A blonde girl had emerged from the kitchen holding a large knife. He noticed the other students present, fanning out ready to react. Katsuki clicked his tongue and removed his hand from Izuku, and hoisting a box he walked upstairs. Shitty beeping Deku, they don't know you and your damn quirk. I will make sure they know that you don't belong. I am the future #1. All these beeping extras will know it soon. Everyone turned to the door being yanked open as another ash blonde entered. Hey brat, where the beep? Her voice froze. The duffel bag over her shoulder crashed to the ground as she sprinted past and around everyone and tackled Izuku to the ground. Fuyumi and the rest were about to react when they heard the woman begin to sob. Izu, is that you? Please tell me that's you. She pulled up and took both his face in her hands, staring intently at him. Izu. Hi, auntie, he replied. The woman collapsed into his arms and just continued to cry, as Izuku patted her back. It's okay auntie, it's okay. Slowly they sat up and the woman disentangled herself some. Oh, my God, where have you been? Terrible until recently, he responded as he made his way to his feet and pulled her up as well. Can we talk outside? Mitsuki Bakugo nodded and followed him outside in a daze. Izuku gave Himi the look of explaining later, which caused her to back down. So, the son hates him, but the mom loves him, and he called her auntie. I am so confused, Ochako said as the door closed. Mitsuki. Okay brat, spill it. Where have you been? Where is Hisashi? He abandoned me right after I turned 6. Well, not that he was around very much, you know that. I would have starved if it wasn't for you and Uncle Masa. I went into the system and then sold me into a fighting ring. I got out not that long ago and made a plea deal to avoid prison, and here I am. What the actual beep? She yelled. How can you drop that so beeping casually like? Because honestly, I wouldn't want to overwhelm you with all the details right now, because well, he rubbed the back of his head and drew her attention to his scared arms. It is pretty beeping bad, and I don't want to drop that on you. Mitsuki wrapped him in a tight embrace. I looked for you for so long. I had promised Inko that I would take care of you, and then that piece of shit just disappeared and you along with him. I am so sorry Izu. If I had looked harder, I could have found you. It is okay, auntie. He hugged her back. It is okay. Did Katsuki see you? Yay, he did. Don't worry about it, auntie, it will be okay. You should go help him get settled. I am sure that we will see each other again. You can bet on that Izu, she said, wiping her tears and kissing his cheek. With that, she turned to head back into the building with Izuku trailing her. Common room. When Izuku entered, he went over to his daughter and wife. He leaned in and whispered a quick explanation into Himi's ear before Fuyumi came over and handed him a form. I need you to fill that out and hand it to me tomorrow morning about that incident. Izuku was about to protest till Himi placed her hand on his arm. If that happened to Eri and she didn't fill out that form, what would you do? She said as her eyes bored into his. Besides the obvious. I would be upset with her. Fine, I will have it filled out for you in the morning, Ms. Todoroki. Fuyumi giggled. Thank you, Mr. Midoriya. Now dinner should be arriving soon after everyone eats you and we have our meet and greet. The three are free to retire to your cottage. Soon Mitsuki came downstairs and hugged Izuku again, wishing him good night. Katsuki came down and grabbed his belongings, carrying them up on his own. Any offer of assistance was met with a growl or a beep off. He ignored the call for food, not that anyone complained too much. The newly formed class of 1A was soon eating and talking in the common area, as it seemed that everyone had their food. Fuyumi gathered everyone's attention and reintroduced herself to the class and began to lay out the ground rules. She then called up each student and had them introduce themselves and their quirk, plus any hobbies. Shoto was the first to be called up. Hello everyone, I am Shoto Todoroki. Fuyumi is my sister. We are the children of Endeavor, and no, I will not answer any questions about him. My quirk is half hot, half cold. I enjoy cold soba and I recently discovered that I enjoy movies and cheese popcorn. Ochako stood up. Hello, Ochako Uraraka, please call me Ochako. My quirk is zero gravity. I can remove the gravity from anything I touch with these pads on my fingers. I love mochi and I enjoy action movies and hope we can all be friends. She finished with a bow and sat down. Denki loved video games and was hoping to get to know everyone better. He looked at the girls as he said it. Sato loved to bake and became an instant favorite of the girls. Sue liked to knit and cook, and Eijiro enjoyed working out and video games. Mina stepped up and smiled as she talked about her love of dancing and hanging out, and looked forward to getting to know everyone. Tenya robotically explained his love of reading and studying. Yuga has a love of French cinema and poetry. Koji simply said his name and love of animals. Mezzo loved martial arts and action movies. Kyoka had a love of music and songwriting. Itsuka smiled and told Mezzo she loved martial arts and action movies as well. She smiled at Kyoka, telling her that she could play some guitar as well. Momo smiled at Ida as she shared his love of reading, Kyoka, and Inari when she said she could play the piano, and that she was also a fan of cinema. Toru pointed at Mina and told her about dancing and hanging out, and Sue about knitting. Fumikage professed his love of poetry and the Dark Shadow also mentioned how he loved apples, and that Fumi ran a mean D&D game if anyone was interested. Creepily Mineta simply stood there and professed his love for the ladies. Himiko stood up. Hello everyone, my name is Himiko Midoriya. My quirk is transformation. It allows me to shapeshift into anyone, but the catch is I need their blood first. I like plushies, watching movies with my husband and daughter, cooking, and I look forward to getting to know every one of ya. She said with a wink. Before anyone could react, Izuku stood up. Hello, Izuku Midoriya. My quirk is Blood Strike. If I ingest someone's blood I can absorb their physical strength, and it stacks for everyone I consume. Himiko is not my sister, she is my wife, and this little girl, he said as he picked up Eri, who shyly waved at everyone. This is Eri, our daughter. The class was silent, and Itsuka's heart sank to her feet. Thank you everyone for a wonderful day, we will see you tomorrow. Izuku took Himi's hand, and they walked out. As the door closed, they heard the class scream, "What?" Itsuka. Itsuka was at a loss for what to do. Well, the obvious thing to do was to push down these silly romantic fantasies. She would go through them, put them in a box, put them in another box, then throw that son of a bitches into the mother-beeping ocean. Of course, he was married and had a kid. All 18-year-olds she found hot were that way. She had never really found anyone attractive before. She dated a few boys and even a couple of girls, but nothing ever clicked, and it didn't last very long. So now, when she finds someone that invades her dreams and her thoughts randomly, of course, he is beeping married. It wasn't like she was in love. She was crushing on Izuku, but damn it. She ignored the ache and the heat between her thighs of all the rotten luck. She lay on the bed looking up at the ceiling before sleep came to claim her. Light smut. Mina. Damn it, why didn't Himiko say something about being married earlier, and why was Himiko being all flirty in her room today? Maybe they had an open marriage or something. Izuku was hot, she wouldn't mind being in the middle of that sandwich at some point, but that was for a later date. First things first, Himiko. Mina closed her eyes as one hand began to dance on her nipple, and the other snaked down between her thighs. Smut warning. Izuku and Himiko. Izuku buried his face in his favorite place between Himiko's thighs. His wife tangled her fingers in his hair as it ground against his eager tongue. With a throaty beep, Izuku gently slipped 2 fingers in as he licked her clit. After years of listening and being taught, he curled them up, finding the magical spot to make Himi explode. Patiently he brought it out of her, that sweet kiss of the little death. Her explosion left her gasping for air, her body glistening in a sheen of sweat. But Izuku was not done with her tonight. He quickly slid up and buried himself inside her. Himi exploded again and again. Himiko was multi-orgasmic, and her husband knew how to bring that out. Like tonight, he was taking and ravishing and worshipping her, and she loved it. He was going to beep her into oblivion, and she couldn't wait. When he turned her onto her stomach and began to press her into the mattress, she knew she was done. She wasn't going down without a fight, she knew what her man liked. Looking over her shoulder, "Put a baby in me, fill me up Izuku, don't stop." She felt his trust increase, his beeps were a sweet symphony to her ears. She felt him explode deep inside her, driving her over the edge again. She smiled when his erection lapsed but sprang back to life. "Give me more," she purred, pushing back into clenching her inner walls around him. She came as he did just that and pounded into her with reckless abandon. When he grabbed her hair and pulled her head back, she knew she would be in heaven tonight, especially when she heard the throaty growl of "mine" rumble in his throat. Himiko Midoriya was in pure bliss. Smut end. Morning came. Eri awoke to find her father in the kitchen cooking Sunday breakfast. She watched as he turned from a video to the stovetop, carefully flipping bread. And in another pan, he did something with bananas. The bacon was cooked decently. Eri giggled at the intense look her father had, which of course, announced her presence. He bade her sit as he served up banana French toast. Eri smiled and waited till her daddy sat next to her. "Where's mommy?" "Oh, she is tired today, so I thought I would let her sleep in." "You ready to start school tomorrow?" "Uh-huh, that's my princess." Himiko emerged close to noon wearing short black shorts and a tank top, her hair pulled into her traditional buns. Eri ran over to get her kisses before returning to her coloring book. Himiko smiled when she saw Izuku slide over a plate with a hearty sandwich and chips. She kissed her husband deeply. "You were certainly worked up last night, baby," she smirked. "You know how to push my buttons, and after my encounter with Bakugo, I needed that so badly." "You were raring to go. Is it because of a certain curvy, pink-skinned girl?" "Oh, she had something to do with it, but you know I love it when you dominate," she said with a wink. "I promise you, though, as soon as we graduate and are doing okay, you are putting a baby in me." "Yes, ma'am," he said with a smile. Before he could say anything, there was a knock at the door, both looking at each other as if neither were expecting company. Izuku walked to the door and peeked outside, seeing Mina and a floating set of clothes which he took to be Toru. He opened the door and smiled. "Himi is in the kitchen." "Eri, do you want to go play outside?" Eri dropped her crayon and ran over to put on her shoes to go outside with her daddy. Mina and Toru smiled and made their way to the kitchen, much to the delight of Himiko. Izuku and Eri plus Tenya makes 3. Izuku led his daughter to the field in front of the dorms, grabbing a bouncy red ball that his daughter loved to kick around. She was having a blast running around, occasionally kicking the ball, and stopping to pick some stray flower that caught her attention. They weren't out there long when he felt someone walking up behind them. Glancing over his shoulder, he was surprised to see Tenya. "Good afternoon, Midoriya," he offered as a way of greeting. "Hello, Tenya, is there something I can help you with?" Izuku responded, giving the brunette his full attention. "I noticed you were outside, and I just had some questions I was wondering if you would answer." "Go ahead," Izuku said carefully. "Are you and Himiko married?" "Yes, we are legally husband and wife." "And Eri?" Legally adopted. You both are too young to raise a daughter, don't you think? Not really. Is there something you are building up to? Then let me ask plainly, why are you here at UA? Plea deal. We come here, graduate, and we get to be free people. So you are, in fact, a criminal. My brother whom you saw yesterday is Ingenium. He was there at the raid and said you murdered a villain already in custody. Is that true? Yes, it is, Izuku said nonchalantly as he lightly kicked the ball back to Eri. That is a dastardly deed, and you admit to doing so in a callous manner. Do you even desire to be a hero? Of course, it is a means to an end. I graduate from this place, my record is clean, and I get to be a hero and care for my family. If you are asking if I am here for some foolish notion of being number one because I believe in the system, then you are seriously wrong. If anything, Himiko and I will probably go underground due to our quirks. Does it not bother you that you killed a defenseless man? No, I sleep better knowing I did it, and so does my daughter and wife. So, murder is just something you can brush off. Depends on who we are talking about, and are you talking about murder or killing? What you did was murder. Chisaki or Overhaul was a disgusting piece of shit that I would go to any lengths to kill. He was a stain upon this planet, and being gone is a good thing. You are not the courts. It is not your place to be judge, jury, and executioner. Izuku shrugs. Well, unless you can travel back in time, what's done is done. You should not be here. I ask that you and Himiko withdraw from this academy not to stain its reputation and allow those who truly desire to be heroes to assume your place. Nah, we are good, besides a condition of the plea deal, remember. If that's all, you can leave now. You are a black mark upon this class, and I shudder to think I will have to deal with you for the next 3 years. You can always go to another school there and tell your brother if he has a problem with me. He knows where I am. How dare you make a veiled threat against a true hero like my brother? That wasn't even close to a threat, but if you want one, here it is. If you want to do this, we can. You wouldn't be the first speedster I put in the hospital or the morgue. You sit in your ivory tower and look down upon all the little people trying to survive in this little world. Ask you, dumb-ass brother, what Overhaul did to my daughter or me and Himiko. Then, if you can even form an original thought in your small brain, ask yourself what you do. I will not tolerate such behavior, Ida said, stepping into Izuku's personal space. Eri, he yelled. The little girl stopped what she was doing. Go to mom right now. The little girl took off in a mad dash towards the cottage. If you don't step back out my face, Tenya, something bad will happen to you. I am not afraid or intimidated by you, Midoriya. Then you have never been in a real fight before. Izuku swiftly brought a knee into Tenya's crotch, followed by a swift strike to the throat that dropped the boy to one knee as he grasped for air. A follow-up kick dislocated Tenya's knee. Tenya screamed in pain before he felt an elbow to the side of his head, knocking him onto his back. It was over before anyone could come out of the dorms. Fuyumi came running out, yelling at Izuku to step back, which he did, holding his hands up. You should reach out to Recovery Girl. He has a dislocated knee and damage to his trachea. As more students spilled out, so did Himiko, followed by Mina and Toru. Himiko ran to Izuku with his hands up while others rushed to check on Tenya. Ochako, can you float him so we can transport him to the infirmary? Shoto goes with her, please, Fuyumi said. The two students jumped into action. Izuku, you know it is against school policy to assault another student. I will have to report this to the staff. Please return to your cottage until Mr. Aizawa comes to discuss this incident with you. Sure thing, Fuyumi, Izuku said, lowering his head and walking back to the cottage as Himi asked what happened. Mina and Toru heard the brief overview. Their eyes were broad that Tenya would do something like that in the talk about Izuku and Himiko being here as part of a plea deal. The couple walked past as Mina and Toru returned to the dorms. Himiko called back after them. Hey, aren't you guys going to come back with us? Is that okay? Don't you two need to talk? No, not really. You might as well come over. We can have dinner while we wait for Aizawa to show up. Still trying to figure out how to answer, Mina and Toru followed the couple back to their cottage. The cottage. Mina was the first to speak after the couple saw Eri, and she was happily coloring in her book again. Izuku, why did you attack Tenya like that? He was talking out his ass, demanding that Himiko and I drop out of UA. Then he stepped up. I warned him, but he didn't listen, so I put him down, for lack of a better term. He beeped around and found out. Why did he want you two to drop out? Izuku looked over at Himi, who nodded. I will tell you two if you want to know, but I will tell you now that you will not like what you hear. Is it that bad? Toru asked. It is pretty brutal, Himiko answered. Why would you tell us? Because I want to be friends with you two, and it will come out sooner or later. I might as well tell you now so you can decide if you want to be friends or not, Himiko said. I want to be friends too, Toru responded. If you are comfortable telling me, I will listen. I am in, too, Mina said. I already have many questions before what happened, so give it to me. Izuku put some tea to brew before he began. My mother died when I was 4, and my father abandoned me when I was 6. I was dumped into the system, but soon I was taken in by a foster family that sold me to an underground fighting ring. Thankfully, with my quirk, getting blood in a fight was easy to do, and I was held there till I made a deal with our homeroom teacher to give him evidence to bring the whole thing down in exchange for immunity for Himiko. My parents tossed me out when I was 13. I tried to survive before getting caught up in the same group as Izuku. They tossed me into a cell that he was in, expecting us to kill each other, but instead, we bonded. He didn't try to steal my food, so he seemed decent in my book. They left us isolated, and we were both so lonely that we latched onto each other. They did it to control us, that is what Midnight says, and it worked. Himiko said, pouring the tea. The fights in the pit were kind of like a gladiator fight, not exactly like one. Some were to the death, and some they wanted me to lose. I wouldn't throw the fights, and accidents happen, so sometimes people died or got crippled when they weren't supposed to. Izuku said. They wanted me to do some assassinations or sleep with clients. I had complied sometimes, but I was pretty wild so that they couldn't rely on me, but I had a very useful quirk, so they didn't want just to kill me off. Wait, they made Izuku do fights to the death, and you had to kill people or have beef with them? Toru asked. Yay, I had to sleep with people sometimes, but that is the short of it. So, Himi and I latched onto each other, and they essentially let us play house in between requests or fights. They soon dumped Eri in with us to further our bonding. We immediately did all we could for her. The man that ran the pit was named Ringmaster. He worked with the man in charge of Eri, Overhaul. Eri's quirk is called Rewind. It can de-age anything organic, moving it back through time. Tree to sapling, person to dust, you get the idea. Overhaul figured out how to use Eri's cells to make a quirk suppressing bullets. He even managed to make some quirk erasing ones. His goal was to wipe out all the quirks on the planet. He did this by harvesting Eri's blood. He would use his quirk when she ran out of blood to give. Himiko said before looking down. Overhaul's quirk disassembled things at a molecular level and put them back together perfectly. He used it on Eri all the time. Izuku spoke, staring directly at the girls so they could understand what he meant. He was running out of ways to control her, so he put her with us. When they would come for her, they would let us fight to try and keep her till he would come and explode one of us till she complied. He would do it to her to make us do whatever the ringmaster or he wanted. Toru began to sniffle, looking at the little unicorn happily coloring. Mina dabbed at her eyes. On a run to collect some money owed to Ringmaster, I met our homeroom teacher and made a deal to help him bring down the pit and Overhaul in exchange for immunity for Himiko and Eri's safety. Wait, what about you? Toru said. This big dummy didn't include himself in the deal, Himiko said. The raid happened, and we all fought to be free. I was there fighting Overhaul with All Might. Of course, All Might managed to beat that bastard, but they would take him to Tartarus, and I couldn't let him live knowing that he might escape one day. And I had to let Eri know that the monster that haunted her dreams was gone forever. I stole blood from All Might and punched Overhaul's head clean off his shoulders. Tenya's brother is the pro Ingenium. He was there that day and saw what I did, so he told Tenya, who had a problem with it. What about Ringmaster? Mina asked. He didn't survive either, Himiko said with a hint of steel. I thought it was all over, but all I cared about was that Himiko and Eri were free. The principal of UA made us an offer. We had to get in and graduate. If we did, our records would be clean. Izuku said, shrugging. It was a no-brainer. I didn't want to do it at first, but we have no skills to get a job or even take care of Eri properly. I would have had to turn to robbery or prostitution to try and take care of her. She deserves better than that, so we took the deal. Himiko said. That sums it up. Before they could continue, a knock at the door interrupted the conversation. Izuku opened it, seeing Nimori and Aizawa. Outside or inside? Aizawa said. Outside. We have company, Izuku said before stepping out. That is terrible, Toru said, coming over to hug Himiko. Damn girl, how are you? Not a psychopath, Mina said, hugging Himiko as well. Izuku and Eri. Lots of Eri. Whenever my back is against the wall, I think, for Eri, and push through. Izuku does the same. You know what that idiot's idea of heaven was? Himiko said, wiping her eyes. No, Mina said softly. Seeing Eri and I playing in a park on a sunny day. That was all he wanted, all he dreamed about. He told me he would go to Tartarus for the rest of his life, knowing that Eri and I could go to a park. That's beautiful, Toru said. Outside. After explaining the fight, the two teachers looked at each other and then back to Izuku. First, Ingenium will be censored and reprimanded for divulging classified information. Second, for your assault on Tenya, you will serve 1 week's detention. You need to remove yourself from the situation or attempt to before resorting to physical assault. Third, damn it, kid, you need to control yourself better, or you will lose what you are trying to build. Am I understood? Aizawa said. Yes, sir, Izuku said. Any other student in Aizawa would have assumed it was sarcasm, but he understood that with Izuku, he responded to orders. As long as he respected Aizawa, then their relationship would work. Izuku, I know your environment and that your standards restrained your reaction to Tenya, thank you. But you need to adhere to different standards. I want you and Himiko to come for conflict resolution training on Tuesday and Thursday, Midnight added. Are you telling those girls your history? Yes, Himiko wants to befriend them, and they seem nice, Izuku said. Now we read Fuyumi's report about the incident with Katsuki Bakugo. Would you please elaborate? My mom was friends with his mother in school. We grew up together until my father abandoned me. When Bakugo's quirk manifested, everyone told him how great it was and how he would be a great hero. The fact that my quirk is blood-based when it manifested, it was seen as villainous, as most blood quirks are. He would tell me I couldn't be a hero because only a villain would have a quirk like mine. His parents are why I would eat or have my basic needs met after my mom died. I remember them fondly, but Bakugo hated me for my quirk and, I think, for the attention that they gave me. When he saw me, his superiority complex had only gotten bigger. I am sure we will fight sooner or later, but I will do what you asked Sensei to try to remove myself from the situation. That is all I can ask, Izuku. Now we will let you return to your guests, don't stay up too late. Tomorrow is your first day. The two teachers left with Izuku and waited till they were down the path before heading back into the cottage. After all, tomorrow would be a new day. Izuku was pleased to see the girls still talking and being friendly with each other as he walked back into the cottage. Himi was smiling, and to him, the only thing second to that was Eri's smile. What made it better was that it was genuine. Seeing that it originated from outside their bubble made it sweeter. While there were the Bakugos and Idas of the world who would judge them and more than likely ridicule them, it was nice to see that some would reserve judgment. He was not naive enough to think that after anyone hearing their tale would understand and want to be friends, there would be those who would tell them they should have acted differently or that they should have just let themselves die. Those people, of course, had and would never experience anything like what they went through, but such was the case with life. And he was okay with that. No one should have to go through what they did, and fate willing others wouldn't. Himi and he could help to make a world where that was true, where people were safer, and where Eri was safe. Leaving the girls to talk, he made his way over to his daughter and sat next to her on the floor as she was engaging in her favorite pastime of coloring. Nothing was drawn in dark colors, it was all bright and vibrant, completely ignoring what would be considered normal and beautiful. He took up a teal crayon and began to add to her artwork. Eri didn't say anything. Instead, she leaned against his chest, and he hummed a tune absently. He didn't know the words, but he remembered it clearly. His mother had sung it to him. It was a struggle to remember her. He could remember the feelings she gave him more, the safety, love, comfort, and peace. Things that he had lost for a while, but they were being reclaimed, things that Eri hadn't experienced but was not getting the chance. Something he would fight for with all his breath. Things he realized that everyone deserved and should have an opportunity for. Himiko. As Himiko talked with Toru and Mina, she stole glances at the lights of her life, coloring and cuddling. She couldn't help but smile as Mina told a story about this big scary man who had people running from him only to find out he was trying to ask for directions. She just soaked in how she was living what, at one time, she would have thought of as a fantasy. She had dreamed of being able to be herself, not wearing a false mask, and talking to someone, girls her age who wouldn't give her side eye or shun her for her fangs or quirk. Of a person who would love her for all her eccentricity or desires. A lover that loved her. And someone who looked at her with an unconditional love that wasn't predicated on anything other than pure love. She had all that, and Mina and Toru allowed her to be her. Izuku loved her and her desires. Aries was just pure despite everything she had gone through. And something pure had to be protected. Midoriya House. Would you lovely ladies like to stay for dinner? Izuku asked, entering the kitchen. We wouldn't want to impose, Toru responded. Please stay. I want to keep visiting for a bit, Himi said, taking the invisible girl's hands. Mina. Toru asked her friend. I'm in. Mina said, smiling. What is on the menu? Izuku smiled, pulling out a large package of ground beef. Hamburgers on the grill, he said, smiling bigger as he got to work assembling the patties with some help from Eri. Himiko rolled her eyes. So, he sees this show one night about barbecue and grilling. Then he asks Sensei about it, and those two spend 2 hours talking about it. Next thing I know, they are looking at websites, watching videos, comparing notes, and then he bought a grill and has been dying to use it, Himiko said. Hey, now it was nothing like you in midnight with your paint and cloth samples, looking at them all day and at different times, Izuku responded. Because you have to see how the colors change, all three girls said simultaneously before bursting into laughter. No one is ever on my side, Izuku grumbled. While Izuku was cooking, Eri wanted to play outside, and Toru volunteered to watch her, leaving Mina and Himi alone. The two started on the sides for dinner, with Himi cutting the condiments while Mina did the salad. Are you okay with everything? Himi asked. You know we dropped a lot on you today. I am, Mina responded. I am glad you trusted us to share. Oh, I am more than happy to share, and so is Izuku, Himi added suggestively. Mina paused as her brain was processing. I was wondering about that. Good, I was hoping you were. I would have to think about that some, Mina said with a small gulp. How do you guys, share? That would depend on you. I would share, with you, and if you like, you can, share, with him, or not. Or we can all, share, together. Mina blushed, turning a lovely shade of lilac as they danced around the topic with innuendo. I thought about it, Mina whispered. So have I. Let me know if you want to make your thoughts a reality. Himi said, giving Mina a quick, playful smack on the butt. The bedroom. Izuku emerged from the shower, toweling off his hair as Himi sat naked on the bed rubbing in lotion. They seem like good people, Izuku said. Yeah, I propositioned Mina, Himi said. Izuku raised an eyebrow as well as something else. How did that go? I think she is interested. I don't know how far, but we will see, Himi said, smiling at his reaction. Rising to her feet, she sauntered to her husband with a devilish smile. She sank to her knees in front of him. Now, my king, let me show you my appreciation, she said with a lick of her lips. The first day, Himiko and Izuku left the house, each holding one of Eri's hands, making their way to the little girl's preschool. Of course, along the way, Eri may have had to swing and jump over the cracks in the name of safety. They were greeted by Fuyumi's smiling face as she took Eri's hand and led her in. They went to the main campus and engaged in light conversation about the first day. Himi had jogged off ahead when she spotted Mina and Toru after giving Izuku some puppy dog eyes and a big kiss when he just sighed and shooed her along. He smiled, watching her laugh and carry on like any other student. He spotted a familiar head of orange hair. He smiled and jogged over. "Good morning, Itsuka." Itsuka stiffened hearing the voice last night. Her dreams had caused her to awake in a sweat, and she had been cursing herself the entire time for the dreams. "Oh hey, Midoriya," she replied. "Midoriya," he said. "I thought we were on a first-name basis, what's up?" "Nothing. Do I need a reason not to call you by your first name?" She snapped back. "Whoa," Izuku said, putting his hands up defensively. "My bad, I thought we were cool after the exam and move-in day. Sorry for misreading the room." "Yeah, well, whatever," she said, her walk speeding up. He just kept walking at his usual pace when suddenly she whirled around. "Why are you following me?" We are in the same class," he said. "Kendo, what the hell is going on?" She winced some hearing him calling her Kendo. "You didn't tell me you were married. You should have said something." "The topic didn't come up. We didn't have a chance to talk about it during the exam, and sorry for being happy to see you when you moved in. My beeping bad," he said, his voice tinged with anger. "I was happy to see you too, but then you had to go and end up married." "What does that have to do with anything? Can we not be friends or something?" "Well, I am sure your wife wouldn't like that. Where is she anyway?" "She went to walk with Mina and Toru. I saw you and thought he let me say hi to the girl I thought would be a friend." Itsuka took a deep breath. He hadn't done anything wrong. They had an encounter with the zero-pointer. He had helped her move in, and she was the one with a crush, and when she found out he was unavailable, she was being a bitch about it. This wasn't how the successor to All Might should be behaving. "Look, I'm sorry, Izuku," she said, dropping her hands in an exasperated manner. "I just have had a hard time sleeping the last few nights, the first day of class anxiety, and some other stuff. Can we just pretend this didn't go all to shit and I wasn't being a total bitch to you for no reason?" She looked at him, waiting for an answer. When she saw him turn around, she felt like she had royally messed up. She saw him jog around a tree beside them and come back smiling. "Hey Itsuka, what's up?" She just started laughing. "You are such a dork." "Yeah, but a cute dork, you even said so." Itsuka blushed. "I didn't say anything like that. Now come on, we will be late, Dorcas." "You are going to take that away from me," he pleaded, walking after her. "You beep." Class 1A. As everyone entered class, they could hear Ida yelling at Bakugo to take his feet off the desk and Bakugo threatening violence. Izuku looked at Himi and shrugged. The yelling stopped, and the two boys turned their attention to Izuku. Bakugo clicked his tongue and turned away while Ida made a beeline straight toward Izuku. "You." "Yes, it's me," Izuku responded. "I filed a formal complaint after your actions, and you are still here." He bellowed. "What is the meaning of this?" "It means when you beep around and find out, you don't get in that much trouble, but I do have to attend a special class on conflict recognition. I will kindly ask you to lower your voice and step back, or do I need to remind you what happens when you don't?" Izuku said menacingly. Tenya stepped back. "You are still a black mark upon this university, and I will not tolerate your presence." "Cool, you may want to see about transferring to a different class or school then," Izuku said, stepping around Ida and taking his seat. Unfortunately, that seat was in front of Bakugo, but it was next to Itsuka, so you win and lose some. "See, I haven't even taken the class yet, and already I am a master at conflict resolution," he said to Itsuka. "Dork," she responded as she rolled her eyes, but she couldn't help but smile. "Surely I cannot be the only one who feels that he and his wife have no place in this school," Ida said, looking at the rest of the students. "Some of us would like to make our own decisions," Denki said. "Stop being a bully," Ochako added. "I, for one, am quite thankful they are at this university," Shoto said. "Look, man, you took an L, just be a grown-up about it and train for the rematch," Eijiro said. "I don't care what happens as long as people stop yelling," Kyoka said. "That shit hurts my ears. There are standards that must be upheld, and I will see that they are. Ida stood, fists clenched at his side. Again, with the yelling, Kyoka sighed. Mr. Ida, Eraserhead said as he entered. Either you can find your seat in class or outside the principal's office. But sir, he protested. Fine, Mr. Ida, Eraserhead said. Let us do this your way. You have earned yourself a 1-week detention for instigating the incident the other day. Same with you, Mr. Midoriya. Izuku just shrugged. There have been official sanctions against your brother for sharing classified information and a damages claim filed. If you have a problem with this, I can transfer you to 1B, or you are welcome to leave the school. Now, everyone else in your desk or gym uniforms. Get changed and meet me at the athletic field in 10 minutes, or you will be expelled. Izuku and Himiko immediately grabbed the uniforms and hurried out the door. It spurred their friends into action, and the rest of the class followed suit. The boys found their way to the locker room and began to get changed. Shoto was changed when, as he was walking out, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning, he saw Izuku, who smiled at him. Good morning, Shoto, he said. Good morning, Yojiku, he responded. How is Eri? She is doing good, Izuku said with a smile. She likes school and has made some friends. It's all I could ask for at the moment. How are you and your family doing? Fuyumi is still upset with you for the fight with Ida. You should talk to her, Izuku nodded. It is still a difficult road, but I am happy to try and walk. They stepped out onto the athletic field and continued some small talk. It was good practice for the both of them. Also, it was another step on the road to friendship, something both of them needed. Aizawa just watched and smiled as the two boys talked. It was cleverly hidden behind his capture scarf. Once the whole class was assembled, he stepped forward. Usually, Aizawa would use a logical ruse to see if the students had any talent or if he would expel or demote them to general studies. But this year was different, and the difference was the Midoriyas. He watched as they pushed hard with their studies to pass the written exam, how seriously they took their therapy, and their love for each other. The other central point was their respect for Nimari and himself. Izuku especially was one to follow his orders and listen when he spoke. He could break it if he introduced deception into their relationship. Breaking it could lead to horrible consequences for the family and himself. He didn't want to ruin what they were trying to achieve. This year was going to be different. Good morning, students, he began. Before any of you start about the opening ceremony, it is a complete waste of time, and you will find that time is your most precious resource, the one thing you cannot get back. Your appointments with guidance counselors have already been set, and you will find them in your email. Remember to check your email daily, as important bulletins will be sent there. Understood? Yes, Sensei. Today, we are going to participate in the same physical fitness tests that you have done your entire life, but unlike all those other times, this time, you will use your quirks. That sounds like fun, Mina burst out. Aizawa's eye twitched. This is not time for fun, Ms. Ishido. I will not only be grading your results on the test but how you use your quirk in each different test. If you fail to improvise, then you will be demoted to General Ed. If you fail to take this seriously, you will be expelled. I am here to push you, and you are here to push yourselves. Some of your quirks will not affect these exams. Pushing beyond your physical limits is part of the test. This is the starting line for all of you now. First, Ms. Kendo, you scored first place in the practical exam. We are going to start with a ball throw. Step into the circle and throw the ball. I want to see the same effort you put in when you punch the 0-pointer. He finished by tossing her the ball. Itsuka took a deep breath. Her control over One for All was lacking. It responded to her, but it still would break her. All Might hadn't been much help as he told her he could use it at 100% from the beginning. She turned the ball over in her hand as she walked towards the circle. What am I going to do? She thought back to the 0-pointer, but her memory was more of Izuku, his arms around her, the feeling he stirred in her. She chased the thoughts and thought about when the 0-pointer attacked. She turned and punched without thinking. But as she thought about it, she could clearly see Izuku doing the same thing. She focused on the image of his arm wrapped in those blood-red wraps that were part of his quirk. The wraps weren't just on his hands. They extended up his forearms. His quirk was spread out, his strength was not all concentrated in one spot, and his legs were stronger. His entire body had to be, or else he would tear his shoulders out, or break himself. Instead of concentrating it all in my fists. Izuku stood in the circle and felt one for all spread out all over her body. It was intense, her body cried out, and she felt like she was going to explode. Quickly, she dialed it back. Sensei, a moment, she called. Aizawa raised an eyebrow but nodded. She turned to the class. Izuku, can you come here a moment? Izuku nodded, clearly curious, and jogged over. Everything okay? He asked. Yeah, I just have a quirk question, but it's kind of weird, she said. I will help only if I get my cute title back, he said with a smile. Really? She said, blushing slightly. Fine, you turd. Excellent, he said. Now, seriously, when you absorb strength, how do you keep your muscles from exploding? Izuku was confused about why she was asking him such a question but obviously needed the answer. I don't use it all simultaneously. I hold some back like a spare tank in case I need to push it farther or into a certain area or maneuver. Hold some back, huh? She looked to be in deep thought for a second. Then, it was like a light bulb had gone off. You are a beeping genius, thank you Izuku. Glad I could help, I guess, he replied, returning to class even more confused. Don't use it all. Hold some back so I don't blow my muscles up. It is so simple, clever and cute. God damn it, why do you have to be taken? I'm ready, she said. This time, she did it just as before, but instead of letting it flood her, she held some back, then some more and more till she could feel the familiar tingle running throughout her body, but not enough that it would break her. She enlarged her fist and adjusted more into her hand, reared back, and let loose. Izuku saw that same red energy flood the girl's arm, but this time, he saw it go all over her body. It was beautiful, this red aurora surrounded her, giving her the look of a war goddess. He was awestruck. The wind storm kicked up by the sheer velocity of her throw left everyone shielding their eyes. It sounded like a cannon went off, and the ball whistled through the air. Once the dust settled, everyone and Aizawa held up the recording device 2,185 meters. Itsuka was stunned, and so was the entire class. Her body was sore, but she didn't care. She had made a breakthrough. When she turned, the class stared at her in shock, but when she locked eyes with Izuku, that wasn't shock. It made her heart flutter and her body warm in a different way. She shyly walked back to stand by him, giving him a nudge with her shoulder. Why are you staring at me like that? You looked beautiful out there, so fierce and strong. It was amazing, he said, the sense of wonder still in his voice. Itsuka blushed furiously. You shouldn't say things like that, you are married. The last part came out, betraying her pain some. What does that matter? He responded. Itsuka, you looked beautiful out there and are damn attractive. Himiko knows I thought that when I first met you at the exam. But you're married, she said. Aren't you? We are, he replied, but it is an open marriage. Look, we can talk more about this later if you want. But no two things. Right now, when you were out there, you were beeping beautiful, and when I first saw you, I thought you were then as well. As Aizawa called the next person to step forward, Itsuka was a blushing, smiling mess. He thinks I am beautiful, but if they have an open marriage, does that mean? He is not off the table. Himiko is cute but beep yes. Himiko and Izuku did well in the tests. They always had a vial or two of each other's blood. Depending on the test, Himi switched between her form and Izuku's, with minor privacy breaks, to avoid standing naked in front of the class. Mina and Toru, sure, but no one gets a free show if she doesn't want them to. When the results were read, Himi, who placed higher, leaned over and whispered in Izuku's ear, I won there for your toy tonight. Izuku smiled, whispering back, yes, master. Himiko could hardly wait for tonight. Kyoka blushed furiously as she had heard everything. Himiko was cute, Izuku was pretty handsome, and Kyokujiro had overheard that they had an open marriage. The university was shaping up well. Boys' locker room. As Izuku had just finished getting dressed, Bakugo walked over and slammed his locker closed. I did better than you out there, you worthless piece of shit. You don't belong here with that damn villain Quirk or that bitch you call a wife. He snarled. The room went quiet. Yo dude, that is going a little too far, Denki said. You want some shitty lightning, Bakugo retorted. Izuku took a deep breath. He was told to try and distance himself. Izuku said nothing and went to walk away. Don't you turn your back on me, Bakugo roared. As he shoved Izuku from behind, Izuku stumbled but quickly found his feet. Bro, calm down, Eijiro said, stepping between the two. Bakugo shoved Irio violently to the side. Get out of the way, stupid hair. Bakugo closed the distance and pushed Izuku, causing him to step back. What, you will step up to Four Eyes but too scared to deal with a real hero? You are acting more like a villain than a hero, Izuku replied. What the beep you just say to me? I am going to be the next #1 hero, and there is no way I will have you hanging around tainting my legacy, so take that whore of a wife and joke of a daughter. Bakugo didn't get to finish that sentence as Izuku stepped in with a left hook that sent Bakugo stumbling to the side, crashing into the locker. Izuku leapt off the bench and connected with a right kick to Bakugo's head, sending him sprawling. Say something again, bitch, Izuku yelled. Say something about my family, I beeping dare you. Ejiro rushed to try and hold Izuku back as the locker room descended into chaos. Rikido and Mezzo were helping Bakugo to his feet when he shoved Rikido off, used his explosion to launch himself out of Mezzo's grasp, and came crashing down on the Ejiro and Izuku. As he pinned Izuku to the floor, he threw his hand back and blasted Eijiro in the chest, sending him flying into Mezzo. The initial explosion in the confined room defeated everyone. The girls immediately knew something was wrong as they frantically pulled on their clothes. Himi leapt over the bench, bursting out of the locker room in her skirt and bra. Izuku shifted his arms under Bakugo's crotch, activated his quirk, and launched him off into the lockers. Bakugo got his arm up to block some of the damage. As he whirled around, Izuku pushed off the ground and speared him back into the lockers. Bakugo placed his hands on Izuku's sides and blasted at point-blank range. Izuku bit his teeth at the pain, but he held around Bago's waist. He hefted him up and turned, slamming him into the bench with a sickening clang as he bounced off into the middle of the locker room. The door burst open as Himiko tore into the room. She saw Bakugo and Izuku in the center of the room. Bakugo came in with a wild right hook. Izuku slipped under and delivered a vicious hook to Bakugo's floating rib. Spit flew from the mouth of the blonde. Bakugo threw a clumsy downward strike, but it was cut off by a rising knee that landed underneath his jaw, launching him skyward and into the lockers. Himiko screamed his name but to no avail, as their ears were still ringing from the explosions. Izuku followed up with a vicious elbow strike that connected flush to Bakugo's temple, his head bouncing off the locker. Another followed, breaking Bakugo's nose. Bakugo got his hands on Izuku's chest and fired. Izuku flew back into Koji, keeping them both from crashing into the lockers behind them. Bakugo spit out some blood and went to push off to re-engage when Mezzo grabbed him out of the air, tackling him to the ground. Izuku pushed off the dazed Koji to continue the assault when Ojiro grabbed him and spun him in the opposite direction from Bakugo. Bakugo tried to fight Mezzo off, but the boy created additional limbs holding Bakugo's arms away from him as he took the explosive blonde back and slipped an arm under his chin, locking in a choke. He squeezed, cutting off his air. Bago passed out in seconds as Mezzo released his hold. Izuku, unsure who grabbed him, brought his foot down on Ojiro's barefoot. The tail user yelled and released his grip. Himiko could see the fury in Izuku's eyes. He was on the verge of killing Bakugo. She stepped up and slapped him as she yelled his name. His gaze snapped to her, full of rage, but as her voice, though distant, filtered into his ears and his brain processed who was in front of him, he snapped to and stopped cold, looking at her. I didn't attack you, did I? He asked quickly. No baby, you're okay, she said, wrapping her arms around him as the other girls burst into the locker room. The boys looked around at the chaos around them, and they suddenly realized they were all in various stages of undress, and there were girls in the room. The shouting began. Momo created a simple white t-shirt and yelled as she tossed it to Himiko. Himiko quickly slipped it on, realizing her state of dress and where she was. The girls were outside as the faculty came running up. Aizawa and Present Mike ran into the locker room as Midnight stayed with the girls. Bakugo regained consciousness as they entered. Izuku was far from him, with Himiko with him. Her hands were on his face, forcing him to maintain eye contact. It was like they were in the pit, and he had just returned from a vicious fight. She was calming him down. "Mike, get Bakugo out of here and to the infirmary, see if you can get a statement," Aizawa ordered. Mike just nodded and quickly got the dazed blonde out of the room. "Midnight, get statements from the girls. Himiko, take him outside, but don't leave the hall." Izuku went and apologized to Ojiro before he left the room. The tail user accepted the apology right away as he understood Izuku's reasoning. Himiko nodded and led him out of the room. Aizawa turned to the rest of his class. "Well." Slowly, the scene replayed. Aizawa was surprised when Mineta stepped forward, holding his phone as he had recorded much of the fight. The rest of the boys were able to help fill in the verbal altercation that led to the whole battle. Eijiro was escorted to the infirmary as well by Ectoplasm when he arrived. Mezzo was ready to accept discipline for choking Bakugo out, but he didn't feel there was much other choice. Aizawa rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I will need full statements from all of you. For now, head back to class." As he exited the room, he gave the same orders to the girls as most of them were standing by Himiko and Izuku. He told Himiko to return to the room. Himi looked at Izuku. "You good?" "Yeah, I'm good, thank you," he said. She kissed his cheek and left down the hall with the others. "I tried to walk away, I swear," he said to Aizawa. "Tell me what happened," Aizawa said. He stood there and listened to Izuku's story, which lined up with his classmate's statement. He simply shook his head. "You did like I told you. Head back to class and fill out a report. Tell the class to wait for me to return." Izuku nodded before heading down the hall. Midnight came out from around the corner. "How now, brown cow? I think I get to keep my streak alive and expel somebody," he responded as they walked down the hall to the infirmary. Katsuki Bakugo had never had to wake up from being choked out. It was a sensation he did not enjoy. As his mind put together what had happened, he quickly made a mental note to make sure Octopus's arms knew his place and soon. It took a moment for him to realize he was restrained to the bed. "What the beep?" he muttered as the door opened, and in walked his homeroom teacher, Recovery Girl and Professor Midnight. "Oh, goody, you are awake," Aizawa said, walking over. "You're goddamn right I am awake, why the beep am I strapped down?" He roared. "Why, for fighting, of course," Aizawa said, "but let me get those off of you. You won't need those anymore. Now, let Recovery Girl examine you and ensure you are in tip-top shape, and we get down to business. Sound good there, Mr. Bakugo?" "Yes, whatever," Bakugo replied as the restraints were removed and Recovery Girl came and did her thing. "He is good to go," Recovery Girl said, exiting the room. "Now can I get the beep?" He started only for Aizawa to hold up his hand. "Now, Mr. Bakugo, please bear with us for a moment longer if you would." Bakugo didn't even notice the sickly sweet undertone of his teacher's words. Instead, his mind interpreted it as if he was being given the respect he deserved. "Now, tell us what happened today in the locker room. Yay, that beeping villain Deku you have running around attacked me." Bakugo bellowed. "For no goddamn reason." "No reason? How horrible," Aizawa said in the same tone as earlier. He leaned back in his chair, looking shocked. "Midnight, did you hear that? There is no reason at all that Mr. Bakugo was viciously attacked. Was it only Mr. Midoriya? Hell, no others jumped in because there was no way Deku could beat me. That octopus arm guy jumped me from behind. How horrible," Aizawa said as Midnight pulled out her phone. "Now, this was all for no reason at all. No, I told you all from day one that he was a villain, him and the whore with him. I don't even know why you let them in here in the first place." Bakugo ranted. "What the beep you just say to me? I am going to be the next #1 hero, and there is no way I will have you hanging around tainting my legacy, so take that whore of a wife and joke of a daughter." Bakugo's voice came out roaring to life from Professor Midnight's phone. "No reason at all," Aizawa said. "Mr. Bakugo, Did you think you could say such things about Mrs. Midoriya and their child without ramifications? Especially after you were the one who started the confrontation and shoved Mr. Midoriya in the back. Before you say something, we have video evidence and eyewitness testimony. Bakugo was silent. Now, the thing I love about the first day of school is that I get to expel someone normally. I remove them from the hero course and kick them right down to general studies. Removing them from the school would be terrible, but lessons do need to be taught. But this year, it seemed I would deny my little pleasure, but then you happened. Isn't that great, Midnight? I don't know about Great Eraser, but it will make today interesting. Midnight said. What? He started, only for Aizawa to hold up a finger and shush him. It was such an unexpected action that Bakugo shut up. Katsuki Bakugo, you are, as a result of this, expelled from UA, not just the hero course but the whole school. Do not pass, go, do not collect 200 yen. Your parents will be notified of your expulsion and must be present before you are released from the hospital. Due to the nature of your crime, with your parents and faculty present, you will be allowed into the dorms to collect your belongings at an appointed time. This mark will be part of your permanent record. I wish you luck in the future. Aizawa said all this clearly, and with each word, he watched as dawning recognition danced into Katsuki's face. Are you beeping insane? You are expelling me while that piece of shit walks around here with those jokes hanging on him. I am Katsuki beeping Bakugo, the next #1 hero of Japan. What the beep does a underground nobody and a wannabe star know about heroics? I want to talk to someone. Who isn't beeping Deku's dick. He raged. Midnight raised an eyebrow. She hadn't heard that insult since she was stuck on a bus full of nuns. She watched as the boy climbed off the bed in a blind fury, beginning to froth at the mouth. His rampage continued into nonsensical words and ramblings, mostly centering around how he was the best and that everyone was either jealous or too damn stupid to recognize it. Or some combination of both. He flipped the bed and machines and made ludicrous threats to her and Aizawa. Aizawa let him finally sputter to a stop, looking at his phone occasionally. Good, your parents are here and have just finished meeting with the principal. We will escort you off campus now. Class 1A. The entire class was sitting in the room when Izuku entered, took the sheet from ectoplasm, and approached his seat. He stopped at Ojiro's desk. Hey man, I just wanted to apologize again for stomping on your foot. He bowed to the tail user. You were just doing what was right. I got startled when I got grabbed and just reacted in instinct. It is all good, man, Ojiro said with a smile. I saw that grill outside your house. Just cook me a meal, and we can call it good. Deal. Izuku turned to look at the rest of the class. I owe all of you guys a meal. Thanks for trying to step in, and sorry for everyone getting caught in the crossfire. If you weren't here to cause the problem, then maybe things wouldn't have escalated, Tenya said under his breath. Kyoka just turned and glared at the speedster, who shrunk in his chair. Ejiro entered shortly after being cleared from the infirmary. As soon as everyone finished, the boys mostly finished their incident reports, as the girls didn't have much to add, so they were talking more. The boys soon followed suit, with Izuku joining in after he finished. Tenya kept himself apart, annoyed at the whole situation. Izuku, Ejiro said, walking over, what the hell is that guy's problem with you? He has a problem with my quirk. He never thought it was heroic when we were children because of its nature. I hadn't seen him for a while, and apparently, his attitude never changed. Izuku shrugged. Your nature doesn't help, Tenya said. Okay, what is your problem? Surprisingly, Ochako spoke up. Are you just a bully or a quirkist? I am neither such thing, he bit back. Well, you seem to be, she said. Why are you being an asshole? Tenya was shocked, as was most of the class, by her words. That man is a murderer and a stain upon this university, he said once he collected himself. That woman is the same, he pointed to Himiko. It would be best for the rest of us if they were to leave this university, their daughter. Careful with those next words, Himiko said, her voice cold and emotionless. Tenya gulped. Would be better off being placed with a suitable family rather than being raised by those, two. How can you say that? Toru almost leapt out of her seat. Have you seen them interact? They love Eri with all their hearts and are doing everything they can to give her the life they never had in a future. I was there all day, and they just loved her so much, and she loved them. You are just an elitist asshole. And you are ignorant of the truth about them. He yelled. No, we are not. Himiko and Izuku told us everything. Himi wants to be our friend, and she told us everything. She didn't hold back, you dick. If you knew what they both had gone through, you wouldn't be acting this way. Mina said, standing up next to Toru. Then, if you understand, you should agree with me. The speedster said, shocked that if these two girls knew the truth, how could they stand with, let alone defend the Midoriyas at all? You know that feeling when you walk into the middle of a movie and have to decide, but you don't know what the hell is going on. Denki said. If taken at face value, it would sound like Ida is a quirkist, but it seems there are some pieces of truth in what he is saying. Momo said, standing up. Killer more than a murderer. Himi shrugged. Same, but yes, I did murder someone in custody and would do it again without hesitation, Izuku said, glaring at Ida. Whoa, shit, Denki sputtered. Is there a difference? Mineta said, looking warily at the duo. Yes, explain the difference so they can see who you both truly are, Tenya spoke with a hint of smugness. Okay, let's get this shit over with. I don't want to have to go over this 18 more times, Izuku said, standing next to Himiko. She took his hand. Himiko and I were sold into an underground fighting pit. She was forced to do all kinds of things, including killing other people for the guy that ran the pit. I had to fight in the actual pit for the enjoyment of the paying customers. Sometimes the fights were to the death and others not. Accidents happen. This wasn't some regulated thing. It was all out, and there was no guarantee that you would be allowed to live even if you yielded. That sounds like ancient gladiator fights, Mezzo said, leaning forward. That is accurate, Himi said. I need blood for my quirk and to stay sane. My parents didn't like that very much and denied it to me till I went crazy. When the pit got a hold of me, I was not the picture of sanity you see before you but much more, feral. She let go of Izuku's hand. They threw us in a cell together to force us to bond, and we did, and we fell in love. When their threats of violence against the other weren't working either, they threw Eri in with us. The man that controlled Eri's quirk could destroy you on a molecular level and then reassemble you. Izuku stared at Tenya. Now imagine him repeatedly doing that to a little girl for his experiments. Then he is doing that to someone you have grown to love and the little girl you have begun to think of as your daughter, in front of your eyes, till you comply. They would do the same thing to Eri, make her watch us fight for her and then get destroyed and reformed before her eyes till she complied. It was a game to them. They would allow us to fight and bond and then do that till we complied. Izuku met a hero who cared and was not in the pit's pocket. He helped feed them information that led to the place being raided. And when he saw the man that tortured all of us, he took the opportunity to ensure that piece of shit would never have a chance of touching Eri again. That Eri could sleep knowing the monster was dead. He didn't know if he would be there to protect us and had to make sure the monster was gone. She turned her glare to Ida. So tell me about how hard your life had been. Tell me about how you had to fight and kill people you considered friends. Or how did you give your body to people so your family wouldn't die? Come on, tell me, her voice breaking some. Tell me what in beep you have had to do in the world to see tomorrow. What have you had to put in your body so you can eat tomorrow? We are here to be heroes to provide for our daughter. Not anyone else's, ours. We want to make the world better for her and ensure that no one else goes through what we went through. Tragic as that is, it doesn't exclude murder, Ida said. You are not the law, it is not your place. Did you kill him while he was in cuffs? Sato asked, looking at Izuku. Yes, I did, he responded, looking to the class. I had to make sure he was gone, that his influence or some other bullshit wouldn't allow him to get free and come for my family one day. I hope and pray that none of you are ever in that situation. While some of you can argue that we should have had faith in the system had failed us at every turn. If anyone threatened my family, I would shove my orbs down their throat till they choked and then call the police, Mineta said. The glass turned and looked at him. No one beeps with my family. If someone did that to my little sister and brother, I would do the same thing, Sue added. I want to say that you should have found another way, Sato said, standing up. But I haven't been in that situation, and it is too easy to sit here and pass judgment when the hardest thing I have ever done was pass the entrance exam. Did you have to kill friends? Ojiro asked. As pit fighters lived and trained together a lot, while some people were there to make money or live out violent fantasies, I was put there when I was 6. I fought kids my age. I saw kids younger than me fight. You both died if they told you to finish your opponent, and you didn't. Izuku closed his eyes. I can see them and tell you their names if you like. No, that isn't necessary, the tail user responded. I have something to say. Shoto stood up. I stand with these two. They came to my and my family's aid when needed. They took action without question and with any expectation of reward. That is all the proof I need of their character. We would love to be friends with all of you, Himi said, pulling everyone's attention. But you don't have to be if you don't want to. We want to graduate and become pro-heroes like the rest of you. My reasoning may differ greatly from yours, but our end goals are the same. As long as we can get along, that is fine. That is the point, Aizawa said, entering the room. The world out there is not black and white. There are shades of gray, Mr. Ida. Without listening to him, I could have arrested Mr. Midoriya and gone about my day. But I did listen, and I chose to believe him, and by doing so, we were able to bring down a vile organization that had operated for decades in the shadows. Drugs, prostitution, assassinations, child trafficking, money laundering, you name it. Mr. Bakugo has been expelled from UA in its entirety. The entire class looked stunned. You are here to be heroes, not carry your petty grudges. Mr. Ida, the Midoriya are here to stay. You can transfer to 1B or another school. I will no longer tolerate your attempts to turn other students against them. They have told you all about their past, and it is up to you to decide what you do from here. Himiko is right. You do not all have to be friends, but you do have to get along and work together. For the rest of your time in the UA and the field, you will find your lives in each other's hands. Wouldn't you like to know that the person covering your back is someone you can trust? He looked over the class. You are dismissed back to your dorms. Get some rest because tomorrow is your first heroics class. Himi smiled at Izuku. I will pick up Eri. I will meet you at the cottage. Do you mind starting dinner? I would love to, he smiled. What is for dinner? Spaghetti and meatballs. I made sure it was something you can handle. He smirked and gave her a salute before he headed out. Hey Himiko. Itsuka ran over to her. Himiko stood back so they could talk, telling Mina and Toru she would catch up. I am not looking to cause trouble, but Izuku said that you guys. Himiko smiled. Yes, we have an open marriage. If you want to chase him down and kiss him or anything else you have in mind is just fine. Just make sure he doesn't ruin dinner. Just like that, he told me how much he likes you. Himiko smiled. I can tell you like him too, and I am okay with whatever happens. Okay, thanks, Itsuka said, I guess I will see you later. Stay for dinner, Himiko said, stopping her. I want to get to know you better if things progress with you and Izuku. I want to know the kind of woman he is running around with, and that will be around Eri. You know that is completely fair. I would like to get to know you better, Himiko, Itsuka said, running off to catch up with Izuku. Mina smiled as she caught up with Mina and Toru. She was surprised to see Eijiro waiting with them. I cannot imagine what you and your family have been through. I want to get to know you better. Would you mind if I walked with you guys? The more the merrier, Himiko responded, smiling broadly. The home was full of life, as the boys were all in the kitchen doing their best to make dinner. Thankfully, Eijiro was there as he seemed to know what he was doing. I used to have to make dinner when my parents worked late, he said with a smile. My little sister said she liked my spaghetti better than our mom's. Hey, Izuku, was it all true? It is, he said, preparing the loaves of garlic bread. When you first said it, it put me on edge, but then I started thinking about my little sister. And I realized that I would probably do the same thing to protect her, and I knew I couldn't judge you for it. He stirred the sauce. If you're cool with it, I would like to be your guy's friend. I think there are many ways to be strong or show strength, and what you and Himiko have done is one of the strongest things I have ever seen. You guys shouldn't be as nice as you are, yet you have us in your house and are feeding us dinner. Thank you for that, Ajiro, and it would be very cool, Ajiro, if you were to be our friend, Izuku said, and Shoto slowly and deliberately was cutting the tomatoes for the salad. He caught the other two looking at him. He just said, Fuyumi usually only has me cut the lettuce. Did you tell her you were staying for dinner? Izuku asked. I don't want to get in trouble with her. I did, he replied, continuing to perform surgery on the tomato. She will be hosting a dinner at the dorms tomorrow night and wants you all to attend. We would love to, Izuku said as he slid the bread in the oven. The next morning, Izuku awoke with the first rays of light poking through the window. Himiko was draped across his chest, her leg tangled over one of his. He smiled at the peaceful feeling that greeted him as he awoke, the sense of peace knowing that while he may have to fight today, it wouldn't be to the death or for his family's survival. It had taken a while to settle into the peace of living in UA, but the move to the cottage, Himiko and Midnight decorating, painting, and making it into a home had solidified it. With peace and calm, Eri was safe and, most of all, happy. Not only was Eri happy, but Himi and he were finding happiness in their developing relationships and with each other. They had figured it out during their time in the pit, but now, with that pressure off them, it was this rediscovery process. Making love and enjoying each other completely had been the most fantastic part of their rediscovery. There wasn't an urgency to try and cram everything into every moment they could breathe. They didn't realize they were even holding their breath. When they finally did breathe, it was a whole new experience, knowing that an accident might happen and the certainty that came with knowing that you were fighting in the pit area were two different things. There was no day off. Izuku remembered fighting back to back with broken limbs. There was never any certainty in their previous life. Whenever one of them walked out that door, there was a real fear that they might not return. He lay in bed thinking of how different things were. Their past had been laid bare for the class, Katsuki had been removed from the hero course, and no one was at their door attempting to lynch them. The day was new, and who knew what the afternoon might bring, but it was something, at the very least, he never understood fully. Whenever their newbies were brought in, depending on their age, they would cry for home or their parents. He was so young when his mother died that all he had were vague memories. There was one instance where he had to kill his opponent. The boy's name was Osakazu. He was a big old kid who talked a great game and had won about 8 bouts, killing or seriously injuring 3/4 his opponents. That night, battered and bloodied Izuku stood over his broken opponent. The ringmaster, like Roman emperors of old, had given the thumbs down. Osakazu started crying. It was his begging for his mother that Izuku remembered, the desperate call that if she was there, it would be okay. He had long forgotten that sense of protection and safety he had felt in his mother's arms. Now, here on a blood-soaked dirt arena, he was being reminded of that as he was about to rob someone of that opportunity. Izuku didn't even know if it was possible. He could have spared him, but it would have meant both of their deaths, and Izuku knew he didn't want to die. At the time, he wasn't sure why he wanted to live. So Izuku killed him, and Osakazu's voice would still come to him on stormy nights. He wasn't lying to Ojiro, he knew all their names and faces. Osakazu, 14, 6 feet 2, black hair and eyes. His face was slightly rounded, still showing baby fat, the small scar on his left temple, 3 black moles in a triangle pattern on his right cheek, scar under his chin. He knew that sleep wouldn't come to him and that seeking it was useless. Instead, he slipped out, meaning he told Himi he would cook, and she nodded, snuggling under the blankets. He showered, dressed, and walked into the kitchen, looking at a video on how to make an omelet. It turned into a scramble in the end, but he tried fried potatoes, a salad, and toast. With a devilish grin, he sent Eri to pounce on Mommy. Eri had a level of stealth that an elephant would be envious of due to their muffled giggles and Himi immediately waking up when the door opened, but being a good mommy, she knew the game. Right when Eri was about to pounce, the dreaded blanket monster made its attack. His daughter's peals of laughter with Himiko monster noises just reinforced, home. For the happy thoughts, the dark thoughts of the morning were not gone. He wondered if Eri had called and cried for Himi and him when Overhaul had taken her to do what he did. All he could do was promise that if she was ever in that position again, he'd better be dead, or someone was about to be killed regardless of the rules. Eri pulled him from his dark thoughts as she ran into the kitchen and hid behind his legs, telling him about the return of the blanket monster. With feigned shock, he told her to stay and guard breakfast while he went into battle. Through a closed door, mock sounds of battle but more the two parents making out, he emerged victorious. His second reward was kisses and hugs from Eri, a good battle all the way around. Like the day before, some of their classmates came to the door to walk with them to class. Eri grabbed Shoto's hand again, dragging him off with her to her daycare, Izuku smiling as he followed. Once again, the great debate was renewed almost immediately with Eri bound and determined to bring Shoto over to the side of pancakes. Once the two young men were on their way to class, Shoto smiled. She is very stubborn. I don't know what you are talking about, and nothing you can say will change my mind on the subject, Izuku responded quickly. Shoto opened his mouth to retort but immediately stopped and laughed. It wasn't a sound that Izuku had heard from the boy. He was very quiet and what would be called reserved. But Eri seemed to be his kryptonite, as she was for most people. The duo walked into class a few minutes before the bell. He noticed some of the looks they were being given. It seemed the boys in the class still hadn't made up their minds, but girls had rallied around Himiko. They were even talking about a sleepover. Himiko was a smiling flower amid all the girls, at the center, not on the fringe, not being held at arm's distance, but being part of the circle. Class began, and with it came a slight nervous energy. The empty seat in the class was part of that, but as was the fact that today would be their first heroic class ever. No one had talked about it, trying to keep it casual when bringing it up. Hey, isn't our first heroic class tomorrow? Person A would say. Yeah, I think so. Honestly, I don't know, Person B would respond. They both knew, they all knew, it had been circled on the calendar since it had been announced. Sadly, the Midoriya had provided an unplanned distraction, but now, with the day upon them, nothing would distract them from that moment. Aizawa walked in as the bell rang, taking his customary spot at the front of the class. All right, class, as I am sure all of you are aware, today is going to be your very first heroic class, he paused as the kids cheered. But that will not be till after lunch, so I need you all to focus on today's classes, as the referenced information will be important going forward. He looked over his students before his gaze fell on the empty chair. As I told you yesterday, Mr. Bakugo has been expelled. His seat shall remain vacant for now, but it will be filled. He crossed a line that cannot and will not be tolerated. Despite whatever notions you have in your head, all of you are here to be heroes. Your reasons, your motivations, and your desires to do so are all different. But you have all decided to go into a career choice where you will be asked to put your life on the line nearly every day. You will be asked to put your life in the hands of those next to you and those you have only heard of. That empty seat will be filled. Someone will step up and show the desire and will to follow the same basic dream you all have. He paused and started walking down the rows of the class. It will be the same thing that is asked of you when a hero falls. You will be asked to step forward to fill that need. To carry on that dream your fallen brother or sister left behind. Make no mistake about what I said. Should you graduate and become a pro hero, you will become part of a fraternity in that you all share the same basic dream to be a hero. Your methods will be as different as you imagine. A torch was lit since the first hero stepped onto the scene. A torch that has fallen only to be picked up by another, and another to today. The class could hear the passion in their teacher's voice, the passion with which he spoke. A torch you will pick up and carry farther into the future, a fire that the fates willing you choose to one day put down yourself, that another take from your hand, move it further into the mythical day called tomorrow. So today, when you put on those costumes for the first time and step onto the training grounds, you are doing so not just with your classmates but your family, your brothers and sisters in arms and in a dream. He stood in front of his class once again. Families fight, siblings fight, you don't even have to like them, but remember that they are willing to lay their lives on the line to save others, to protect those that cannot protect themselves. You will bleed for each other, cry with each other, and die for each other. So do what you need to do, solve whatever problems you need to solve, but get it solved. He could see the resolve springing to life in their lives, students looking at each other, even some not looking at each other. Now that you are ready to run through a brick wall, enjoy heroic law. It warmed his heart to hear them start to cheer, only for it to turn into a groan as he walked out of the class. They could hear his laugh fading down the hall. Professor Phoenix taught heroic law. He was a spirited, passionate, practicing lawyer. Unlike most lawyers, what made him unique was that he had been both a dominant prosecutor and was now a renowned defense lawyer. His shift in position was tied to his quirk. When he died, he would be reborn with a subtle shift in his personality. He was rather old but looked young. It was this lovely example of how strange quirks could be. This class was straight ahead, right wrong, black or white for some. It suited some of the class. Heroic theory, on the other hand, was anything but. Professor Quanon, or the pro-hero Blade, was also a unique teacher. She had been a young up-and-coming hero in her home country of the United Kingdom. She was Japanese by birth but had lived in the UK her whole life. She was beautiful, 5 feet 11, black hair, purple eyes, and a stunning figure. When she walked in, they noticed that she looked at Momo and smiled. Some noticed a resemblance between the two. That was all fine and dandy, but what made her such a unique case was that she was an up-and-coming hero in the UK, rising through the ranks like a rocket. Her beauty, quirk, and attitude was the blending of greatness. Then, it all came crashing down. She had gone rogue, a criminal, killing a member of the royal family and a cabinet member. What followed was a 5-year hunt for the former hero who was not laying low. Instead, she was all over the kingdom, committing more crimes. She rose to the most wanted criminal in the UK, then she surrendered on national television with a video exposing a level of corruption and vile that rocked the nation. It was still recovering. She went to jail for 5 years and then was released and reinstated as a hero, only to leave the UK and come home to Japan. She was a hero. She was ranked in the top 20 and peaked in the top 5 at one point before stepping back to teach. Her class was the shades of gray that heroes had to deal with, how there was no correct answer, that it was more than just a broken law, and this is the punishment. This was a decisive topic, with people taking sides in the scenario she had presented. Those splintering into other sides with the class all separated, trying to persuade the others to their side. For some, it was immediately centered on their favorite class. The history of heroics entered the room, and Fumi immediately developed his first man crush. The man entered in a floor-length black cloak that, when it opened, he was wearing Western medieval armor, black trimmed in a dark gray, except a brilliant silver lance on his chest. His armor made no noise, and when the hood came down, some girls were smitten. He was European, with black hair and storm-gray eyes. His features seemed to be chiseled out of stone, and when he spoke, his voice had this enchanting tone that drew the class in. Professor Shialanis, the international hero, the Black Knight, was on the tiny list of a handful of heroes the global government licensed. He could arrest every continent on the planet. No one knew his home country, no one even knew where he was born. He wasn't ranked in popularity polls, with most of what was believed to be his cases never being reported to the public. The class was over before they knew it, much to their dismay. With the bell signaling the call for lunch, it put heroic class only 1 hour away. Momo, do you know Professor Quanon? Mina asked as they stood in line. Momo smiled and blushed slightly. Yes, she is my cousin. She is cool, Toru added. Do you think you can introduce us? I would love to. Momo couldn't stop smiling. The class all took their seats and wondered who would be their heroic teacher. Speculation was running wild, but Izuku noticed that Itsuka was strangely quiet. You know something, don't you? She jumped a little while in a cheesy daydream about a date with Izuku. No, why do you say that? She said quickly to defend herself. You seem to either not care who the heroics teacher is, or you know who it is and don't care, which is it? Nudging her with his shoulder, making her blush slightly. I have no idea who it is. I am hyped for it no matter who it is. She lied. Izuku raised an eyebrow at her, but instead, he just smiled. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.